Live.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Preparing to start the second day of Kamailio World Conference, another online edition. Hopefully, again, next year we try to be back in Berlin, May, maybe early June. Let's see.
Live streaming is on.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are located. And thank you for coming to watch Kamailio World, another online edition. I said it yesterday. Hopefully, next year we'll be able to do it again in Berlin, May or early June. Keep an eye on our website and social media channels for announcement. Today, on the second day of 22 edition, the 10th edition of Kamailio World, we start with several presentations, and we'll end up, as we used to do it for the online edition, with a virtual celebration party for our project. The first committers in September, the 3rd of September 2001. So it's like 21st celebration of Kamailio development. Besides that, a bit later in the month would be the 20th presence in the open source space for Kamailio, since it was released as GPL. I had a short history yesterday in my first presentation. And why not? We should mark as well the 10th edition, a round number for Kamailio World Conference. 7 editions in Berlin, 3 online editions, so quite a lot to party. I have some cake for me here and some drink. And the idea is that we have open discussion, not only Kamailio, everything RTC, real-time communication, but also beyond that. Probably we'll have a short period of recording at the beginning, but then we'll stop recording for the party, so people can speak free without worrying being or saying to say something that lost in the recording. That being said, let's prepare with the first session, and let me introduce Yufei. She is part of our community for many years, and thankfully in the last edition she was also presenting, and she gave quite a lot of important technical knowledge out there, including at the Kamailio World in Berlin, but also during the last online editions. Yufei, I let you tell more about you, and the floor is yours. Thanks again for supporting the project in many directions, coding and events, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Yeah. Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Yufei Tao, Tao Yufei in Chinese. And thank you very much, everybody, for the support as well over the years. And I've learned a lot from the community. And I'm presenting to hopefully give something back to especially new users who are not very familiar yet. Okay, a little bit about myself. I had my BS degree from Beihang University in China, and then PhD in electronics and postdoc in binaural 3D sound in University of York. And then I've been working with some AV decoders and SIP client coding for embedded systems. And I've got a couple of patents in telephony audio signal processing. And I've got my own consultancy, Tau Communications Limited. I've had 15 years of experiences working with SIP, especially Kamailio. And let's talk a little bit about Kamailio and RDP engine. Most people already know quite a lot about them, just for the sake of completeness. And just quickly about Kamailio is it handles SIP signaling mostly, very high throughput and very robust. That's why many people use it. It's got very powerful routing modules and a large number of modules to facilitate many applications. It supports various database interfaces and allows you to use many different other scripting languages with the Kami framework, especially. You can write everything in other like Lua, Python, etc., other languages. And it also supports very low-level manipulations for SIP messages. So you can tweak each individual headers, adding them, removing them. And with that, you can fix SIP messages for interoperability issues. For example, not all the SIP endpoints will behave correctly. So if they set some routing headers wrong, you have the opportunity to fix that on the Kamailio. And it can also be used just as a great SIP stack to do some things manually. We'll see something about that later. RDP engine, it handles media side of things, mostly relays media. And the throughput, I had a look on the internet and only found quite a few years old reference saying someone experiences this kind of throughput, which is very impressive here. And then you can also use it to inject media into a specified media stream. For example, playing some prompts to a calling party. And also it does media forking and many more. The RDP engine allows some conversions, for example, between SRTP and RTP, eyes and no eyes, and then codec transcoding. And it supports various DTMF interworking as well. So what can people use Kamailio and RDP engine for? Typical uses, well, it has routing and relay, the most basic use cases, load balancing, NAT traversal, encryption, decryption with SIP and the RTP, and many other things. And another popular usage is using it as a SBC. It's not a real B2B, and they are actually proxies. But depending on what you want out of a SBC, you might find that Kamailio and RTP engine can do what you want. For example, the usual cases like NAT traversal, you have which handles the remote endpoints behind the NAT, which is different from Kamailio RDP engine behind the NAT. Like Fred was mentioning yesterday, there are two different concepts. For Kamailio and RDP engine themselves behind NAT, you can use advertised IPs to handle that. And another thing is network segregation. For example, you could use external and internal networks and keep the users, remote users on the external networks and put your PBX application servers on the internal networks. And then Kamailio RTP engine sit in the middle, and then they decide what to relay over to the other network. You can apply security policies, you fix interop issues. I gave a presentation last year at the Kamailio World talking about using them as SBC. And what else? Now we are going to stretch that a little bit. So they can provide some simple B2B functionalities. The purpose is not to replace the real ones. If you've got massive uses of the B2B features, then maybe it's better to use the proper real B2B. But since Kamailio and RTP engine do have some capabilities of pretending to be B2B, for example, you can get them to play media to a specified streams, or send media somewhere, or even create, terminate, and divert the calls. So if you have the situation where most of the calls are going to be proxied, you only need a fraction of these calls to go through some IVR features, for example, or during the call duration, you only need a little bit of IVR handling. That might be that you can use Kamailio and RTP engine to achieve that, so that you can avoid having to loop in a real B2B, which creates a bottleneck. Okay, so we can, in order to see how we can push that a little bit, we need to know some basics. So we can remind ourselves here. For a basic call setup, we've got Alice, we've got Bob, and they try to make a call through Kamailio and RTP engine. And we know the call will establish through Kamailio and RTP engine, but internally what's happening. So we are going to examine a little bit closer to the messages between Kamailio and RTP engine. What were they going to talk to each other about? So this is an enlarged picture of that. You've got Kamailio here, RTP engine here, and you've got Alice and Bob trying to make a call. And Alice trying to make the call, sending an invite containing a SDP of herself. Here, it includes the IP and the ports she's going to use for media. And Kamailio receives that. And then it sends a command offer into RTP engine saying, here's Alice SDP information. And RTP engine will go off to allocate some ports on itself. And then it creates a SDP for the other calling party to talk to. And then it sends that back to Kamailio in a response to this offer command. And then Kamailio gets that. And then it relays this invite into Bob. And then here, the body of this invite is replaced by the one RTP engine created. And Bob answers the call by sending a OK and containing the SDP of himself. That contains the endpoint IP port he's going to use for the media, and then sends to Kamailio. And the Kamailio sends another command, answer, to RTP engine. And then RTP engine goes off to allocate some ports over here that is used to talk with Alice. And then it creates a SDP, and then putting that endpoint information in the SDP and pass back to Kamailio. So basically, we've got offer message response, and then answer message with a response. And the Kamailio gets that, and then it relays this OK back to Alice, containing this SDP from RTP engine. And then by this time, Alice knows where to talk to, which is here on the RTP engine. Similarly, Bob knows to talk to somewhere here on the RTP engine. And then internally, RTP engine will bridge these two legs. And then you can have the both-way media flowing through. So how does the Kamailio drive RTP engine? So we know it sends commands into RTP engine. That's mostly done using Kamailio's RTP engine module, which provides functions for call setup. For example, RTP engine offer, answer, manage, and operations on media stream, for example, play media, blah, blah. And you can get stats as well. These module functions, they get some information from looking at the SIP messages, but they also provide some ways to override the information by giving the options when you call the functions. For example, you can specify call ID, to tag, from tag, SDP, and then send these into RTP engine. So that sounds very interesting because we can actually create our own information on the Kamailio and send that to RTP engine. It doesn't really have to come from the SIP messages we receive. Okay, so that means we can fix something up and send to RTP engine. Now we are going to have some 2 simple demos where I will create Kamailio and RTP engine and use them as a IVR. And in here, I'm going to use the RTP engine's module functions to send commands from Kamailio to RTP engine. These demos themselves probably are not useful at all, but they give you some idea that we can do something tricky to make something unconventional happen. So that's the purpose of that. The first demo. So Alice will make a call into our IVR, which is Kamailio and RTP engine on the number 1000. And then we'll reply with a OK with the SDP. And here, this is created by the RTP engine. And then we achieve a media flow between them. And on the RTP engine, we're going to play an audio file to Alice. Here, it's not conventional because we don't have a callee Bob over here. And let's go to the demo. Right. So is it running actually? Okay. So we take here. Can you see? I'm not sure if you can see that. That's my phone for Alice. So I'm going to make a call on this phone into the thing. Okay, you can see that. Let's start a capture. And I'm going to make a call. 1000.
Welcome to Yufei's Kamailio and RTP engine demo.
Okay, so it's going to play my own piano piece, not written by me, of course. Okay, here we can see that's 026 is Alice, and then it sends a invite into our 020, which is our Kamailio and RTP engine's IP. And then in the SDP, you can see it contains its IP and port. So we can stop that. Okay. And we have this OK back from the Kamailio and the RTP engine. And then this SDP contains the RTP engine, the Kamailio's IP, and then with a port. And then after that, Alice knows where to send it. And then we have a audio flowing here. Okay, let's go back to this demo slide again. Okay, so what was I doing underneath? So after receiving the invite from Alice, Kamailio actually sends a offer command with that SDP to RTP engine. And then RTP engine creates a response and send back to Kamailio. And Kamailio sends that back into Alice in the OK message. And then after that, you see we have some audio over here. Okay, so next one, we are going to have an incoming call from Alice, and then we'll answer the call and send the caller's audio to somewhere we specify, 54321 port on the same IP of Kamailio and RTP engine. Okay, so let's quit that. Go here. In order to do that, I'll need to demo 1. Remove that. Save. And then we'll restart. Okay. Let's make this call now. Okay. So now we have a one-way audio. We need to watch that on TCP dump on port 54321. So we see the things coming in, and then the call is still that's that stream being sent to here to this port. And then now we are going to stop the call now. Okay, so let's stop. And we see the bye, and then that's the end of this call. Okay, let's restart the slide. Okay, so that's demo 2. So what happened underneath here? We wanted to send Alice audio into somewhere. What can we do? Actually here, I was pretending there was Bob who is not there. We just pretend is listening on this IP and port 54321. So we pretend there's a Bob over here. So if there was a real Bob here, what happens? We receive the invite from Alice, and then we send to RTP engine. RTP engine creates a SDP, and then we send that to Bob. And then Bob will return us a SDP of his own, and then we send it to RTP engine. RTP engine creates another one. We send it to Alice, like we were talking about a bit earlier. And then we should achieve media flow between Alice and Bob. But of course, all these are fake. They don't exist. What we did was Kamailio crafted this SDP on behalf of the Phantom Bob, and then he sends to RTP engine, and then hoping the RTP engine will think that's a normal call, and then in that case, Alice audio will be sent by RTP engine into the fake Bob's IP address. So we saw that did achieve what we were trying. Okay, did that work? Kind of. But if you examine closely at the NG messages between Kamailio and RTP engine, you can find there are actually some problems in there. In demo 1, the play media command, we were calling on Kamailio. That's a RTP engine module function. The tags were not quite right. And then there was some warning by RTP engine saying, oh, I'm ignoring it. It's not right. And then the reason is it was not conventional. It's a one-legged call. And we actually sent SDP, RTP engine created for Bob back to Alice. So if you remember there, Alice was sending this, and then RTP engine should be creating a SDP for Bob, but we sent that back to Alice. So basically, Alice was trying to send to RTP engine, and RTP engine think that's Bob's audio. And then eventually we actually have an echo over here. If we didn't play the audio to the Alice, we can hear that. We can show that again if you have time at the end. And okay, so for demo 2, there are problems as well. We were calling RTP engine manage for the fake response from the ghost phantom Bob, but actually the module function actually sent a command offer to RTP engine. It wasn't sending an answer as we were expecting. And why is that? The reason is the module function actually looks at the SIP message. If it was seeing a OK message, it will probably send the answer command to RTP engine. But actually, there was no OK. We just faked it we just pretend there was one. Actually, the module function saw the previous invite message. So it was actually sending offer rather than answer message. So that's pretty much very messy. It's not quite right. But kind of the result is kind of on the surface is working. So what can we do to fix that? The solution is that we could manually drive the RTP engine, which means we can create realistic scenario for RTP engine. Like demo 1 was stretching it a bit too far. And we can send commands directly to RTP engine without using these module functions. So we don't have the problem that is trying to check the SIP message. And then actually it was giving RTP engine conflicting information and then getting things confused. So in order to do that, on Kamailio, we can handcraft some messages and to send to RTP engine, exactly like what would happen if the real messages were received. And on the RTP engine, because it operates on the information Kamailio sends to it, it thinks it's just a usual call. So nothing unusual, it just operates normally. In that case, it will be more reliable as well. So a few notes. We only need to do this manually if we are talking about unconventional use cases where the module functions get in the way. Otherwise, it's much easier to use module functions, of course. And then it's a very low-level approach and very flexible. You can achieve a lot of things you don't normally do. And then reference is the RTP engine's web page. It tells you the structure of the NG messages between Kamailio and RTP engine and everything, the options and the functions, whatever. And also you can do TCP dump for some calls. So you can have a look what the NG messages really look like. And because Kamailio can create SIP messages as well, it's possible to achieve quite complex things. So in 2019, I gave a presentation about call diversion using Kamailio to drive RTP engine in a manual way. It was, if you're interested, you have a look, it's quite complex. I thought it was not a very good presentation because almost nobody understood it apart from Daniel. Okay, so in summary, what we talked about in here, quick intro about Kamailio and the RTP engine, and what can they be used together for. Usual proxy, SBC, and then stretching it a bit, a little bit B2B functionalities. And the basics between the Kamailio and RTP engine interaction, and then usual call establishment process. We remember this complex graph with Alice and Bob talking to each other. And we demoed something by driving RTP engine using the module functions. And it was like a IVR created by Kamailio and RTP engine. And then Kamailio faking things up and sent to RTP engine. And then we saw some problems with doing that using the module functions. And then we said, okay, we can avoid these problems by doing driving RTP engine manually. Kamailio can create NG messages and then can create send messages as well. Okay, so finally, why bother with the hacks? Of course, because we can. But it's not the proper reason. Is like I said earlier, if it's possible to use Kamailio and RTP engine to provide the little bit of B2B functionalities you want, might be worth doing that so that you can avoid looping in the B2B, which could create a bottleneck for all your calls. So maybe you think, I need to divert this call. I need to answer or play some messages to one call party. I need a B2B, but maybe you don't. It's worth trying. Okay, thank you very much. Questions?
Okay, thank you. I'm okay. I'm on. Thank you, Yufei. Very impressive. I said it before, and I want to repeat it. Likely not many out there can do all this kind of magic with Kamailio and RTP engine in terms of media processing like you. I kind of put you in the same category with RTP engine developers in terms of knowledge related to RTP engine and of course Kamailio from that point of view. I see here a question from 7Do. Can you share some configuration? How did you do it?
Yes. Let's go.
Of
It's
course,
actually, hold on, let me share my screen again.
7, you have to share your credit card number in exchange.
Yes. The amount is going to be right. Okay. So can you see that? So in the include config, that's where I was switching between demo 1 and the demo 2. And the main things are in this file, rtpengine.config, which is included by Kamailio config here. So basically we've got, this is for demo 1. So play audio. The first one, we engage RTP engine for the invite from Alice. And then we insert some headers to make it look correct. And then we send it OK. The body of this, the SDP is added to the OK in this. And then here, this is actually the SDP returned by the RTP engine here. And then that's the play audio part. So you basically have a play media. You give it a sound file, which is a defined value.
Nice scripting out there.
Thank you.
And well formatted, I like
Well, I especially tidied it up for the for the demo. Well, it's created for the demo to start with.
Okay, thank you. Then I see James Buddy wanted to speak, and then we have another question. James, you want to ask something? No, you are muted.
No,
or
I don't know. I was just pressing buttons. You know me. I'm always up to.
Okay. Okay. You are still in the dark. There no electricity, so you can't see what you press. Then we have a question on YouTube channel from Amaury Oliveira. Can I use it as a placeholder for nailed up connection where participant A of the call would change frequently? However, participant B would remain the same. So practically it would be like caller changing, call stays the same. Can this be something, what you presented, that can help in such case?
Caller change, but you keep the callee. Well, you can actually divert the media to another place if you want. So basically, if you change your color, that probably means you move your endpoint media IP port somewhere. Yeah, of course, that's doable. Yeah, but it depends on the details, what exactly you want to achieve. I think that would be possible because you can use Kamailio's UAC module, for example, to make SIP messages look correct, the routing headers especially, and you can Kamailio can tell RTP engine what to do exactly. So this kind of lower level manipulation is possible.
Okay, thank you, Yufei. Then thank you for your time to prepare and present at this edition of Kamailio World. If someone wants to address more questions, probably you can do it via YouTube, via Matik's channel, and she can answer. If not, maybe via mailing list. Not to delay it longer, I say goodbye for now to
Thank you
you,
very much.
Faye. And then we are gonna switch to the next presentation, and I would like to introduce Sukchan Lee. I think I saw him on the list of people in the room.
Yeah.
If
Can
you
you
are,
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Good.
You can turn on your video or screen sharing. So he
Let
is,
me try it.
okay. He is, as I understood, the founder of the Open 5GS project, and knowing a little bit about it, and that Kamailio as IMS extension is being used there, I wanted to have a presentation from him, and I'm really happy, and thank you for accepting and joining us for this event. I will let you introduce yourself with more details. Maybe not many in our community know you, but I know others like James, Buddy, or Karsten, which act in the voice over LTE for 5G, know you. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello. I'm Sukchan Lee, developing Open 5GS. Today, I will introduce Open 5GS and explain how to set up voice with Kamailio. And so this presentation can be viewed again at the link you are viewing now. Open 5GS is mainly used to configure LTE or 5G private networks. So it is implemented in C language and currently can run on most Linux distributions, macOS, FreeBSD, etc., but does not support Windows. Here is our history. So on February 1st, 2017, I started developing the program from scratch. The project is now entering its 6th year. First version was released and distributed on October 9, 2017, 8 months after starting development of the program. The project name was Next EPC at that time. As you can see from history, EPC supports voice feature like CS fallback, SMSSG, VoLTE, and HSSCX. Here is a 5G core history. At that time, the project name was changed to Open 5GS prior to start developing 5G core. After 4 months of development, we were able to release the 5G core. And at the end of last year, the VoNR feature was also added. Initially, the EPC consists of 5 components: MME, HSS, PCRF, SGW, and PGW. After that, SGW and PGW use the PFCP protocol to separate control plane and data plane. Then the names of PGWC and PGWU have been changed to SMF and UPF. And EPC and 5G core share and use together using SMF and UPF. As mentioned earlier, SMF and UPF are used together in EPC as well as 5G core. For your reference, in 5G core, network element is called NF or network function. Open 5Gs, we currently support 11 NFs and plan to add more in the future. Now let's see how to build a multi-test environment. First, you need to install the IMS module, MySQL, and RTP engine, RTP proxy. And you need to set up DNS to communicate with the EPC. You can find more detail in the document written by Hollis Press. Here is Open5JS part. The Open5JS can be easily installed in Ubuntu Debian environment. For your information, Osmocom provides nightly package and Martin support provide OpenSUSE packages. You can install something like that. For you need to set up some EPC component in the EPC component for the MME and eNodeB to connect. You need to set the S1AP IP address. So the S1AP IP address, the MME creates an HTTP server with the address, and the eNodeB as an HTTP client connect to the MME. Additionally, the PLM ID and TAC of the MME and the eNodeB should be set to match. The S1AP described in the previous slide is used in the control plane. Now we need to set up the GTPU IP address to connect the data path between SGW and eNodeB. Like MME's S1AP, SGWU needs to create a GTPU server with an IP address that the eNodeB can connect to. After setup, you need to restart MME and SGWU. Then the eNodeB and EPC can connect. Now we need to change the SMF and UPF setting for the data connection of the UE. First, since IPv6 is not used in this environment, we will delete it at this point. Then change the subnet information in SMF, subnet information, and change the setting to use 2 APNs. So the internet APN, because the voice we need 2 APNs. So the internet APN is have already assigned the UE IP address from the 10.45.0.1/16 subnet and use the OJS tune interface in Linux machine. And the IMS APN allocates the UE IP address in 10.46.0.1/16 subnet and uses the OJS tune 2 interface. And PCSCF or IP address is also need to configure in SMF configuration. You need to set the subnet of UPF to be the same as that of SMF. And then SMF and UPF should then be restarted for the setting changes to take effect. When installing Open5JS with a package manager, the tune device is configured using systemd-networkd. Execute the command as shown to create a tune device for the IMS network. Because basically, default installation, there is no information of the IMS, so you need to create the IMS tune device like this. For Internet APN, you need to change the configuration of OJS Tune device. Remove IPv6 and set MTO to 1400 and restart the systemd network D, and you can check the OJS Tune and OJS Tune 2 device interface on your Linux machine. Additional work is required for UE's traffic to go out of the Linux machine with Open5JS installed and enable IPv4 forwarding and also add the masquerade NAT. Now we need to set the diameter. In Open5JS, MME, HSS, SMF, and PCRF supports diameter protocol. To connect Kamailio with domain name, change the MME's identity and realm and peer information using domain name as shown. Open5JS HSS supports CX interface, so to use this in HSS configuration, you need to additionally set p-cscf in connection peer information like this. Change the diameter setting of SMF to domain name and method in the same way as MME. PCRF establishes p-cscf domain name in connection peer for connection with IMS. Finally, we need to restart all 4 daemon for the diameter setting change to take effect as well. In order for HS to authenticate a subscriber, the subscriber information must be added to the database. Open5JS uses MongoDB and provides WEM UI. You can easily add subscribe information sort of WEM UI. Since WEM UI is implemented based on Node.js React, so you need to install Node.js, then install WEM UI application. You can connect to the WEM UI using web browser. The initial ID of the WEM UI is admin, and the initial password is 1423. After logging in, you can change your password in the account menu. There is a menu on the left panel. You can click subscribe panel and add subscribe information as shown. You will now need to fill out USIM information, modify the IMSI, AMF, K, and OP of PC, referring to the USIM information you purchased. For now, only Internet APM information is set as default. In order to add an IMS APN, scroll down and click the plus button. Enter the APN name as IMS and modify the session AMBR if bandwidth limit is required. Since we need to add the PCC profile, Since we need to add the PCC profile, scroll down and click the plus button as shown. By default, QCI1 and ARP2 are set for voice. You only need to modify MBR/GBR for bandwidth limit. And if you press the save button, the subscribe information is saved in MongoDB. You get a subscriber registered as shown, and if you click the IMSI box, you can check the subscribe information as shown in the following slide. Internet and IMS APN are set, and in IMS APN, PCC rule for voice is set to add flow using diameter RX interface. And now everything is ready. Just turn on the eNodeBN UE and test the voice call. Open5JS only supports for VoNR feature, just half of VoNR feature, so not full feature. So Basically, both HTTP2 method and diameter RX method should be supported in 5G core, but only HTTP2 was implemented first. If PCF, one of the 5G cores, PCF supports diameter RX method, it can be used for NR test using Kamailio, but currently Open5G's does not support diameter RX in 5G core for NR feature. So far, we have looked at the voice feature using Open5Gs. Now, we would like to share information about Open5Gs that may be of additional help. Open5G's website has a list of tested eNodeB and gNodeB, something like that. So we hope this helps you set up your lab environment. Here is a record of our collaboration with other communities. On July 19, 2021, the integration with OAI gNodeB was discussed in the issue 1098. Click the link to view the contents. And on May 4, 2012 too, SRS released the 5G essay and provided an application note using Open5Gs. Recently, Sysmocom has contributed a lot to Open5Gs related to 2G or 3G and 3G. Open5Gs does not yet have a voice-related feature in commercial grade at this point. It still seems to be mostly used in laboratories. Internet services seem to be sometimes used in the field. However, I have never heard of voice calls being used in the field. And Open5Gs has not implemented the roaming feature yet. Another old problem, simple web UI for adding subscribe information is only supported, but NMS or CLI for monitoring or changing setting has not been implemented yet. Monitoring functionality is being implemented using Prometheus now. It was first implemented by Sysmocom's PESPIN and is being improved by contributors. These days, I'm mainly working on adding 5G roaming feature. So far, I have introduced Open5Gs and learned how to build a voice call test environment in the laboratory. If you have any suggestion, please let me know. Thank you. Any question?
Okay, I see James would like to speak. Go ahead, James.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. And Suchan, can I start by thanking you for initiating what has proved to be the most useful and wonderful project.
Thank you.
Yeah, beaten only by the wonderful Kamailio, which we've been using for years and years.
Yeah.
And I have to say that the combination of Kamailio together with Open5Gs have opened all kinds of wonderful, interesting possibilities. Just for the audience here, I don't know whether you're aware, but Open5Gs is being used to power the back end of the largest 5G standalone private network in Europe, which is deployed in central Liverpool. So that has been live now for getting on for a year in its current format, and is providing social healthcare and other services in central Liverpool. So in total, that's getting on for some 60 deployed live gNodeBs in central Liverpool. And we're hoping to expand that project in the near future to take that up to somewhere around 1,000 gNodeBs, covering all of Greater Liverpool. So that's proof that Open 5GS actually does work and works extremely well. So thank you for that, Sukchan. I think I was supposed to ask a question here.
Not necessary, but if you have one.
Yeah, well, I've got more. I think we can add some more radios to your list of compatible radios, things that we've been using. And I have a little bit of an announcement as well, which is we're planning to run an open source mobile software event, probably going to be in UK, even though Daniel and Fred would very much like it to be here with me in Italy, but I think it's going to be in UK. And that will encompass all of the projects that Sukchan you just covered. So that'll be Open5GS, Kamailio, Free Diameter, Osmocom, the SRS projects, Open Air Interface, and a few more to boot. And the idea being that we get all of the developers of these wonderful projects together in one place to discuss what we can do in the future, and also to get a collection of people who actually want to take these projects and put them to work, just as we in the Telet team are doing right now. So hopefully that will take place sometime around April next year. We've just got to make sure that we do conflict with Kamailio World Live event and Osmo DevCon, which traditionally happen in April as well.
It's gonna be on site if it's in May. Kamailio World, I mean. If it's in May, if it's gonna be online next year because of pandemic or other constraints, is online. We typically do it in September to mark also this kind of celebration with many years of development. I also have some remarks to do here for those that are interested to play with Open5GS and Kamailio. I noticed on the website of the Open5GS documentation, including those based on Docker. So that should make it easy for people that want to start and they want to play with let's say 5G technology. So we have to make it clear for those that are not much into the 5G. Here it's a full stack from like, data plane going up to the voice, which would be eventually done with the help of Kamailio, but it's a lot more underneath with a lot of packets routing, SMS, and so on. And probably these Docker images that I could notice on the documentation. I haven't tried myself, but just to give this information. And as a question before from myself, that was more like a remark for those that would like to play with. Could you give like an estimate? Because we know, okay, this is the core part, is the software part, but if someone wants to build its own small playground, so we have this software for the core network, what would be like an estimate of cost, and eventually what would be the devices? Like Android phones should be preferred, I assume, yes, because of more openness. But as a budget to buy these antennas or whatever that need to be connected, and maybe also James could add here from like Europe perspective, might be different prices than in Asia. What would be an estimate of a budget to have like 2 devices and antennas to connect to a small platform in a lab?
Yeah, Sukchan, do you want to answer that one, or would you like me to have a go?
Yes. So I missed some questions. Can you chat?
Yeah, it is a difficult question. Daniel is asking how much a small configuration to operate Open5GS would cost. And that's a bit of a tricky question, Daniel, because it really depends on on lots of variables. Going down to the lowest kind of configuration, you could probably do it with an SDR card, which just puts out a tiny amount of power. But if you want to run with real E-node B, G-node B type equipment, I think you're probably looking at a couple of thousand euros to buy one of those. And then, of course, you need some SIMs to go with that as well. And you get those either from Osmocom, the Sysmocom SIMs, or even better, we're just about to launch our Telet Purple SIMs, which are multi-IMSI, multi-crypto with OTA, and come with a live IMS profile, so that you can use the thing out of the box. And that'll come with 10 IMSI slots, 5 of which are pre-populated, so you can actually use that on public networks as well. Oh, and we can also do eSIMs as well.
Okay.
So that was sorry about that.
A few thousand euros. So that means I have to double the price for Kamailio license, right? Okay. Then I think someone wanted to speak. It was Steven. If yes, unmute. I saw like a notification, but I missed who wanted to speak on Jitsi Meet. If not, there is a question or on the YouTube channel from Emmanuel Benedetto. Is there a working VONR configuration using SRS, GNB, and COTS UE? So probably these are some abbreviation, which for me,
that means nothing to you. It means a lot to me. So COTS is commercial off the shelf. UE is a user equipment, i.e. a phone. And the answer is yes, there is. And the SRS guys use that as one of their standard configurations, I think. Suk Chan, you have to help me here because you know everything about Open5GS, and I only really know about our little bits that we use Open5GS for. But I think there are definitely a number of people using Open5GS with SRS RAN. And thinking about it, Carsten, you know that Supreet is possibly one of those. Supreet, who used to work for you until very recently.
Exactly. But to be honest, I don't know exactly about the status on Voice over New Radio. But yeah.
Okay, and another little advert. I have a number of 5G standalone radios that may be available to people who wish to undertake development work. So the deal is, if you want a free radio, which is the expensive bit for putting together a 5G network, then I may have some that may be available to certain selected people. So if you want a radio with which to play around with Open5GS, let us know. And in the spirit of open source development, we'll see what we can do to get you equipped with a radio.
Okay, thank you all. Oh, Marcus wants to speak. Okay.
I just had a look at the SRS RAN site, and there is a lot of documentation for COTS UE configurations. So I think the questionnaire, just go on their website and have a look at the documentation. I think this is limited to Android devices, but I actually did a 5G standalone lab environment with Open5JS and SRS runs. So there is a lot of documentation on their side.
Okay, thanks, Marcus, for adding. Very useful. Yeah, I found also quite a lot of documentation, although I'm not much into DMS voice over LTE 4.5G yet. Maybe when I'm gonna build my network, I will know more about. Otherwise, if no other question, thank you all for contributing to the questions and answers here. Special thanks again, Suk-chan. Hopefully I pronounced properly your name. Joining from South Korea, so for you it's getting late soon. But thanks for using Kamailio, and eventually we'll see better integration, or not integration, but collaboration, like reporting issues that are discovered by your community, and we'll try to make it easier, like what we can do from Kamailio side, like, I don't know, APIs or other type of interfaces for smoother integration. Again, I do appreciate your time, and thanks again for joining our event, and hopefully we'll see you at other events in the future, being James Buddy planned event or other events in the real-time communication area. With that, let's go to the next session, and we have now a Kamailio core developer, one of the oldest contributors, not by age, but by time contributing to Kamailio. It's Henning Westerholt talking about what Kamailio can do the best. I mean, at scale, large deployments, coming here to show us best practices for configuration and other resources management for such deployments. Henning, I think you are around, so thank you for joining us and contributing to Kamailio, and again, many parts of the project, not source code only, but also management, infrastructure, and so on. Now the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for organizing again this year event. Yeah, let me share 1 second. Okay, so after a lot of these more low-level talks about mangling SDP and also the 5GS environment, really exciting stuff. A bit more like a generic strategy kind of talk might be also useful for people just started the development and looking forward to grow services in their environment, in their company. Quick agenda, quick overview. What I'm going to talk today about is just some remarks about myself, a bit about the background of this topic, basically, and then some general remarks about Kamailio configuration management, some building blocks that Kamailio provides, and the main part of the talk will be 4 different examples, from small to large-scale environments, and of course some time for questions at the end. So about myself, about our company, we offer services for real-time communication since several years. As Daniel mentioned, I started 2007, quite a long time ago, with the project. We work with different service providers in Europe, also international. 95% Kamailio work. This is what we are doing. Of course, best practices, as always, are subjective, can be subjective. So the presentation here will talk about the scenarios which worked well for us. You might have different experience. I'm happy to discuss. I'm really open to learn, of course, everything here in this regards. Good to have a good exchange on this conference as well. In my examples, I will use a standard configuration language and Ansible as a configuration management framework. There are other frameworks, there are other languages, KMI languages in Kamailio. You can, of course, adapt that to your specific requirements or environment. As said, I will use several examples to describe the different ideas. It will be a bit more high level, this talk. And most of the examples are targeted to like traditional quote unquote deployments, but the last example will also show some approach that can be used or that's usable for Docker or Kubernetes environments, as of course people also want to use Kamailio in this kind of environments. Kamailio, as you might or might not know, offers a wide range of building blocks to make your config modular, to modelize your config. They work in a way similar to existing pre-processing tools that you might know for example, on C or C++, there's ifdef and else. There's some defines and subst statements that can be used to structure the configuration file. It was discussed also several times on the mailing list. This of course overlaps a bit with other template languages that are available also in like configuration management frameworks like Ansible. Ansible, as you probably know, uses something that's called Jinja 2, which is a kind of different syntax, but offers also similar control flow or different structures. My suggestion would be to keep it to only one template language per file. And this is also one of the general design principles I used in the examples later on. If you use Ansible, of course, the standard approach for having holding your data is to have something like called a host group or host variables or group variables, and of course vaults if you have secret data. And just to give a bit of background here. And as you can see on the list, and this is also, of course, your experience. If you have started some time ago, if you're doing projects with other customers, maybe, or start something in your lab, normally you start with a small deployment, like maybe one, maybe two, a few Kamailio servers. Common scenarios for that, of course, are like a load balancer, something like a SBC, or some call routing services, registration server. This is what you usually do in the beginning. My suggestion would be that even for a small deployment, you have some configuration management framework to manage these configurations, to manage the systems, also to deploy the service. And the advantages, of course, here, just to repeat, so of course you can repeat your installation. You have also documentation in the configuration management. So even if you don't have any proper documentation, you have the configuration management system, which shows the wanted state of the system. And of course, if you want to scale later, or if you need to scale later, then this is a good foundation, to build on top of that, to have a good foundation to grow, to scale your services. Some people might laugh, but I still see projects which don't use any source code management tools. So keep the configuration and configuration management files in something like JIT or some other tool that you might use in your company. This is really helpful and helps a lot also for the quality of your deployments. In Ansible, if you usually start, you have a small playbook, and this small playbook, it does everything. And of course, in the beginning, keep it simple, stupid. It's a common saying. You will have some challenges probably adapting the configuration to maybe your phone, so maybe to a specific environment. So do not add unnecessary complexity in these regards. Just to show a bit of structure, you have a common Ansible playbook. You execute it to deploy the service, the server. This Ansible playbook will contain the system configuration. Then you have some generic Kamailio configuration, which contains routing logic. And then my suggestion would be to have like a second Kamailio config file that holds the specific Kamailio configuration, which is specific to this server, like IP addresses, maybe some defines, features that you switch on, switch off. Just to have a good structure in your project, in your environment. The generic Kamailio configuration should only contain your routing logic in the individual routes. The default configuration, of course, is a good start. There are other configurations that can be used. Make sure that you have a proper formatting. UFI just some minutes ago had shown a nice example of a well-structured configuration file. Just make sure that you have a proper structure that you can work with the file, and maybe sometimes in the future somebody else need to look into it, need to maintain it if you're on vacation or whatever. So this helps a lot to make life easier for everybody. As said, the generic configuration, it should not contain any server-specific configuration. This would be my suggestion. This should be moved or should be added to this specific configuration, and then you just include this specific configuration file in the main Kamailio configuration file. This is already done or like prepared in the default configuration. There are statements like include file that can be used to include this logic. Sorry, this data about the IP addresses or other server information. If you want to activate or deactivate certain functionality, my suggestion would be to stay in the generic Kamailio configuration with the Kamailio way, with the if-def way, and not mixing the Jinja 2 templates into this main Kamailio configuration. It can be a bit more difficulty. It can be a bit more difficult, but of course, if you can handle it, no problem with that. This is just my suggestion to not do it. Here's some example how you can do it. Just say, okay, like the debug level, this is something we set from Ansible. Then we activate or deactivate certain features. If presence is activated, we define the specific presence defined from the default configuration. If there's something like, if we want to have monitoring, maybe we need to have the JSON RPC module. If we have some advertised IP set up for AWS or other cloud providers, we need to have advertise. Otherwise, we just can give the public IP. This can be used in Ansible to nicely structure the file. You can give the database URL, of course, as a define, which will be then used again in the main configuration file, and just to show how you can do it together with Ansible and Kamailio. Especially if you work with some other developers which not coming from a traditional telecommunication backgrounds, they will normally prefer more modern languages like Kimi, the Kimi languages that Kamailio provides, Lua, Python, etc. On the other hand, if you have an existing configuration, if you get some examples from the internet, of course, they will be mostly written in the traditional way. But as you probably know, you can, of course, extend your existing configuration with the Kimi configuration parts. My suggestion here would be to choose and standardize on one Kimi language. Like, okay, let's say you want to work with Lua, then choose Lua or Python or Ruby or whatever you prefer. But just take one and not try to mix different languages. I know that it's possible and it's also work, but you will add a lot of complexity this way, and there might be special modules which are sorry, not so well supported. I'm sorry. If you start out this way to add Kimi to the game, to your configuration file, my suggestion would be to also to have a plan like medium to long term to consolidate it, to just have one configuration style to only use Kimi in the future. But of course, this is up to you, would be just my suggestion. And in case of smaller extensions, my suggestion would be to not start to use Kimi, just to maybe implement it in the standard configuration language. It's pretty powerful nowadays, but of course, if you plan to go in the future to that way, then of course start with the first function and then add more logic in this regards. If you do it, then to combine traditional configuration with the Kimi configuration, I suggest to keep the control flow only in one direction. That means, for example, the main route, the request route, is in the standard configuration language, the traditional configuration language, and then you call subroutes in the Kimi, and then not having like routes in the Kimi, then calling again, routes in the traditional configuration. This makes it a bit more complex, a bit more complicated, but of course it depends a bit on your logic. Sometimes you need to do it, of course, if it's a complicated logic, but if you can prevent it, then it would be my suggestion to not do it. Yeah. How does it look like from a more high-level point of view? You have again the Ansible, you have the generic Kamailio configuration, again with the standard routing logic, Kemi routing logic, and then again the specific server configuration with the IP addresses, maybe some defines, just a small extension to the first example. Now you are lucky. If you are lucky and your service, your business is successful, you need to grow, of course, your service as well. If you have more customers, you need to have more service systems or whatever you call it to handle the load. Many people just copy and paste the existing configuration in this case. So you have one proxy server in one location, you need another one in another location. So just why not copy paste the configuration and just adapt a few things which are different. This is of course not the best way to do it. This will lead to large code duplication and also problems in the long run, because you have a lot of code duplication and you have maybe a bug fix on one side in one location, but you forgot to apply it to the other side. You will have a lot of configuration drift also. So this is of course not a good idea to do it like this. If you already started like this to copy and paste your different locations, different configuration, and adapt it, then my suggestion would be to start soon with the refactoring. The longer you wait, of course, the more difficult, the more painful it will get to reorganize everything. In the best case, of course, you start before doing the extension, but as we all know, sometimes it's not possible because business requirements are otherwise and we cannot wait and things like that. If you organize your configuration, normally people organize the services or organize the configuration according to the service type. This is a user location, user-facing service, or like a provider-facing service, for example, or also, of course, according to the location. It's a German one, it's a French one, US one, whatever. Keep the configuration management in mind. If you have grown to this size, like different locations, different service types, then my suggestion would be to look into Ansible roles, which is like a generic approach to have these modular configuration management roles, which can be applied to different services. And if you implement this modularization, Kamailio, of course, subroutes are not offering like a full function call interface. You need to pass data somehow. Normally, this is done by XAVP or some other variables, and then you can pass data into your subroutes. How does it look like? How it can be look like? For example, here we're having a large-scale development with some different sites, some different functionalities. Again, we have also migrated now to a role approach, Ansible role approach. We have a generic server role, some system configuration, security topics, firewalls, whatever you might need. And we have a Kamailio role, which shows a lot of the which will deploy the Kamailio specific parts. And again, we have the specific configuration starting on the right. For the server parameter for the IP address, we have a specific configuration for the service type, maybe about the modules that are loaded, about different parameters for the modules. We have a specific route configuration, route specific for service, and a generic route configuration, routes which are used in a lot of services. How it can look like from a configuration point of view. Of course, I cannot show you all the configuration files here. Just to show how to structure it from a configuration point of view. You just have a bunch of includes. Here also shown some Ansible variables to how to structure it. As I said, you have a server configuration which has the IP addresses. you have a common configuration for the service, you have the main route, and you have this route-specific parts. And then in these files, this is basically the complete Kamailio configuration. You just call, you have just the request route definition, and then you jump into the main route, which is defined in one of the routing configurations, and the control flow basically moves to these files, and you execute your routing logic there. This was one approach we recently used in a large migration project from another project to Kamailio, and it worked out pretty well, and able to consolidate 20 different configuration files into one set of files, which are basically identical minus the server IP addresses, of course, and some defines. If you use something more modern like Docker, Kubernetes, Docker Compose, maybe together with Docker, normally the way here is that you will do your own Docker packages, because you will mostly need your own configuration files as well, and you might also need a specific configuration for your service. Thanks to the hard work of many contributors, Daniel and other contributors, Kamailio now supports a lot of defines. And also now supports a lot of preprocessing switches and flags also as command line parameters, for example, cdefine with -a, or you can also set a subst with subst, -subst. There's also subsdef, def string, etc. With Kubernetes, you usually will end up using config maps, and in the config maps, there are different ways how to pass information then to the service, and for Kamailio, a common way is also use these environment variables. Kamailio also supports environment variables in the configurations. $env is one thing you can use to basically evaluate environment variables in the configuration language. Regarding the actual Docker packages, this is of course also possible with Ansible, but would be not common. Normally you use something like Jenkins, the CI/CD infrastructure to build your packages. And if you use something like that, I would of course also suggest to not use Ansible then, and for this specific kind of environments, just stay with the Jenkins or GitHub Actions or whatever you might use in your environment. How does it look like? We have some CI/CD system. We have Docker Compose, for example, or Kubernetes orchestration solution. We have a base Docker image. Kamailio works really well with Debian. Some people prefer a smaller image like Alpine, Linux. And you will have in the base Docker image, normally you have your data volumes, maybe some configuration files, a database sidecar for some ACL data, whatever you might need. And then on the right side, on the lower part, you have your Kamailio Docker image. Again, I would suggest like a split approach. You have your main Kamailio configuration, which is generic, and then use environment variables and command line switches actually to define the server specific or like pod Docker image specific information for the individual deployment. Again, with these variables to have not a mix in the configuration file with this specific information. That's all from my side for this generic overview. Thank you for your attention. What is your experience with configuration management in Kamailio? Do you have similar experience? Do you have other opinions on that? Open to your questions, to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Henning, for sharing these experiences with us. There was a question on the matrix, but somehow already answered about this include file or import file, whether they are for splitting the configs. I'm reading it to stay in the recording, because at some point you answer it, and the answer is yes. I'm not sure if there was a note about the difference between them. It's in the docs. One is
Yes.
like soft version.
Exactly. One is the soft version, which doesn't fail if it's not there, and the other one is the hard one, which basically needs to be there. Otherwise, Kamailio will not start. This is, of course, also an approach to have like extensibility, have a default version, and then have the soft version. And if the file is there, it will use it, and if not, not. Also good approach, yes.
Okay. Any questions on the Jitsi room? You can just unmute. I see one that I'm going to read to stay in the recording from Kaufman. SOT's recommendation on use of mode param X is generally more readable than the preprocessor replacement, but I don't think it was mentioned. This is something very new.
Yes.
In the last version. I'm saying it because I added just to contribute here. But yeah, probably can be a preference. Mode parameters evaluated only once, so using variables might be a little bit slow than defines, but makes no big difference. It's startup and it's probably microseconds. Henning, please add.
No, yes, you're right. I mean, it's of course there are new modern ways in the last version. I didn't include it because it's not available like in all versions which I have seen. Yeah, of course, it's possible.
Jovan, you want to speak? Unmute and say it, or it was by mistake?
You're on mute.
Johan, did you want to speak or was mistakenly pressed?
Maybe if it's not working, just add to the chat. We can
see.
mute it.
Yeah.
It's now on with the video. Jovan left the meeting and probably is gonna be back.
Yes.
Okay. So say it, Jovan. Oh. I can see your video, but I can see you try to speak, but I don't hear that.
How about now, guys?
Now that came.
I guess too many microphones I have on my system, so for some reason it always goes to the wrong one. So I apologize. Great presentation. Thank you very much. So we're looking into a bit of challenge between creating a development environment for our developers to be able to run everything kind of Docker Compose locally, and then how that configuration settings of all the different components can be easily ported to sort of production configurations that will be deployed in data centers. I was just wondering if there is any best practices or recommendation, because as you mentioned, in Docker and Docker Compose, you use a little bit different strategies than later when you use Ansible, maybe for the deployment, the production. And on top of it, we have this, situations like a local RTP engine, and then, Dockerizing between the double net needs, different configurations in order to make it work for developers to test. But then a lot of these pieces are obviously not needed in production. And we're all kind of struggling, what is the best strategy to share big part of configuration, but then separate some of them that are more for the local development versus production. I was just wondering if you come across these challenges and how you solve it. Thank you.
I mean, if you just, of course, it's a bit more complicated question. I mean, one approach, for example, would be, which I used for like some staging environment for a project, to have like a special staging config, which basically includes the necessary part from the production config, maybe with some define, something like that. Yeah, using a similar approach for like development and having like the production config using a RTP engine cluster. And then if it's a development type of deployment, to just have an if else and using the local one, for example, stuff like this. Then you have a special machine type or like server cluster type development, like production US, production Europe development, whatever you call it. Regarding like developing in Docker and deploying in production, of course, one easy solution, but might be some challenges involved, is just also do the Docker in production, right? So and you have everywhere the same. Like for what Kamailio concerns, you can. There's no. I mean, just use Docker. It's more or less similar than doing it native deployment. RDP engine, it's a bit more challenging regarding the performance and also the kernel mode and this kind of stuff. It's also not a good. You don't have that much advantages using RDP engine in Docker comparing to other services, but of course you could do it in Docker. And then you have a similar setup or more similar setup from production to the development environment.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? I don't see here, but Henning will be around, I'm sure. If not, you find him on a mailing list if you want to ask more later. And by that, being more or less in time, thank you, Henning, once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
For the talk here. And we prepare for the next presentation, another long-time contributor to the project. Not sure who was first, Carsten or Henning, but they have to sort it out between them. Carsten, which is known as the IMS or this voice over LT extensions guy in Kamailio over the years. It's back to Kamailio World, this time online. You could have seen many of its tutorials about IMS when Kamailio was in Berlin. Those recordings are on YouTube if you want to look over. Not to keep it longer now, I let Carsten to say more about himself and present us about some new additions that he did to dialogue module and probably some use cases in the context of the IMS voice over LT, the field where he activates a lot. Thank you, Carsten, for all your support during maybe 15 years or so with being around the project, and thanking also again for taking time to join this event. The floor, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you can hear me all right. So today I want to briefly talk about some extensions that we did to the dialogue module quite recently, and also to talk to present a little bit what they have to do with the IMS environment. So first of all, I would like to start a little bit of who am I and who's NG Voice. And as you mentioned, a lot of people know me already because I've been working in voice over IP and IMS related topics for more than 20 years by now. I started with Asterisk, some version prior to release 1.0, then because that wasn't really the scale that we wanted to aim at. We moved to the Zip Express Router project, 0.8, I think at that time. Later we moved to OpenZero. Now we're using Kamailio and a lot of other projects. And during that time, during my time at with Kamailio and the open source community, I did a lot of projects. We actually ran the first fixed line voice replacement based on VoIP in Germany in 2006. Quite early times back then running on Kamailio, or I don't recall if it was still OpenZero at that time, but it doesn't matter. And later I worked at Telefonica. At Telefonica, I used to see all the kinds of legacy infrastructure from Ericsson and from Acme Packet at that time. Now it's Oracle. And during my time at Telefonica, I basically started integrating the Fraunhofer Open IMS core into the Kamailio project, 2010. And with this background on the one hand, working with the Ericsson IMS at Telefonica, and then having some connections to the open source community, I started NG Voice at 2011. And of course, besides that, today I have 3 children, and I do some wind energy and forest as well. For those who follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter, you know all of that. I started NG Voice 2011, and I think for me it has been quite a journey. And today We are a team of more than 80 people working only on the mobile network part. And we've built a really big team around it, ranging from quality assurance, from deployment, support teams, everything that we need to really run live networks for MNOs and MVNOs and private 4G, 5G networks. Even though we have offices all over the world, all of our software development is still happening in Germany. And as you know, and as I mentioned, I started with the IMS 2010, 2011. And back then it was clear that I started only with the proxy CSCF, interrogating CSCF, stirring CSCF, added some small application services. At that time, the focus was clearly to launch IMS for fixed line deployments because 4G wasn't around that much at that time. But over time, the solution has grown significantly. We added some more application servers, we added SMS, we added media functions, stuff like that. We added a PCRF because if you are running an MVNO, most likely you don't have a PCRF and you need a PCRF. We did that in Python, or the latest version is in Python at least. And we even did some interworking with legacy infrastructure. And when we used to do some interworking with legacy infrastructure, we actually even onboarded some other projects like the OpenZips projects for this. And as you can see, we are moving towards a really complete core, and there's definitely more to come from our side. Everything fully standard compliant. I think that's really important because if you know, I've been working for Telefonica, then of course being standard compliant is really the key because you always want to achieve some mix and match logic for choosing different components, for choosing different vendors. One key aspect, which has been a key aspect for us from the very beginning, is that everything we do is really cloud native. I think when I started 2010, Docker wasn't around yet. I used OpenVZ, OpenVZ, or Virtuoso at that time, but it was already a container. It was already a container infrastructure. Back then, I did it mostly to keep lab deployment costs down and really make it easy to deploy. And now I would say that's a huge benefit. And of course, like Henning already mentioned, we do everything in a really automated way and everything is scalable. And of course, as you can imagine, working on this field, I'm really happy that actually we won a solution, we won a prize for being the best voltage solution in the market last year. This year it was even, and we see a lot of uptake in this field. But okay, that's I think that's enough from me and who I am and what my company does. So I want to talk about the dialog module and especially the whole IMS ecosystem. And of course, if you look at the deployments that you typically do with Open5GS and the projects in this regard, it's really we started when we did the first IMS on Kamailio. We started by importing all the Fraunhofer IMS modules into the Kamailio project. But over time, we for our more commercial deployments, we replaced several modules internally. And today we are taking this even a step further because if you look at the 5G specs, especially if you look at release 16 and onwards, 5G and what comes next, you will see that basically while on 4G you had all kinds of diameter interconnections, on 5G this is moving more and more towards service-based interface, like HTTP interfaces when interacting with other components. And due to that, we basically by now separated diameter from the Kamailio modules that we did, and we're basically doing a loose coupling between Kamailio and the diameter and SPI interfaces. So if you look at it like that, if you see that in our deployments we're not fully there yet. We do still some native diameter requests, but we're moving more and more away from this. And the reason is really we're doing an HTTP request towards a daemon today, and that daemon does either the diameter request or the release 16 SPI request. And the reason why we're doing this is really because we want to get back to a plain Kamailio, to getting back to really the standard Kamailio environment. And another good reason for this is definitely also because there are some services, if you look at 4G, 5G, where actually a device may talk HTTP towards the IMS network, well, better known as the UT interface, which is basically like running some supplementary service configuration, which of course is a little bit more handy to do in a Python or any other script. But now let's look at the dialog module. As I said, we are moving back to the original dialog module. And of course, the extensions that I did to the module was really about sending an in-dialog request from the script. And I've heard this a lot during my career, that I want to do everything in Kamailio, and likely in this case, it's again, why the hell do you want to send an in-dialog request from Kamailio? And obviously there are several good reasons to do so. So for example, it becomes fairly simple to trigger a certain event from Kamailio script. For example, if you want to do advice of charge towards a phone, you want to display the user what was the amount that my phone call costed, something like that. Or if you want we've got some elements, for example, that speaking about RTP engine and Kamailio, where we, for example, want to trigger an announcement, a mid-call announcement for a participant. And we do this really by creating an in-dialog request from one party to another, and then the other party that's actually working with RTP engine in that announcement. Another reason for doing this and really for implementing in-dialog requests from script is because we wanted to do local RFC 3262 support, which is the reliable provisional answers. It's basically PRAC, the 100 rel extensions you see in zip. And we wanted to do that locally from our Kamailio instances instead of really relying on this happening end to end. And now the last point where we're actually using this functionality already is really something very voltage specific, IMS specific, and that's really about implementing preconditioning in Volta. And we had some scenarios, especially when it comes to interworking with different elements, where we really needed to deal locally with preconditioning. And actually, our Kamailio instances are the only element that really can do this preconditioning properly because they know about the state. So starting off with the first element, with the first example, and I took this example actually from some Grandstream phones, where I said, well, okay, basically I want to create an advice of charge info message towards a phone, and this becomes really, really straightforward because we can now really use an event route like XHTTP, or we can use some other event routes from charging where we say, okay, we want to really send some specific information to a phone. And we can actually now simply do a dialog get with some parameters to look up a certain dialog, and then send an in-dialog request to a party. We can either do it to the caller, or we can do it to the callee, or we can send it to both, and we can really do some really basic things about that. Really straightforward. If I want to generate a local PRAC, that's also becoming really, really straightforward. I take the basic route. I say if I see a PRAC message coming in, I locally send a reply, and And if I see a provisional response coming in, like a 183, for example, then I can use this functionality to locally generate a PRAC message for this. It's really straightforward, it's really easy, and it really simplifies quite a lot of things. The most complicated use case is preconditioning Volta. Preconditioning in Volta. And I want to really give you an example and explain you a little bit what preconditioning is in Volta by doing some real life example. Let's assume you meet a new boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and you decide you want to take her or him for coffee. And you basically tell Bob wants to have a coffee with Alice, and he tells Alice, well, let's go to my place and have a cup of coffee. And Alice says, well, okay, that sounds marvelous, let's do that. And Bob says, okay, great, let's go. So both of them move to Bob's palace, to Bob's place. And as soon as he reaches home, Bob sees, well, shit, I don't have any coffee at home. And of course, it's a little bit an absurd situation. He wanted to invite Alice for a coffee, and now he doesn't have any coffee. So he tells Alice, well, I'm sorry, I ran out of coffee. Maybe I can show you around my place anyway. But Alice, she really was looking forward for this coffee. She wanted that coffee, and now she's totally pissed off. She said, how can you actually dare to invite me for a coffee if you don't have any coffee? I'm leaving, bye. And of course, this is a situation that you really want to avoid. So the ideal solution in this case would be to check, do I have coffee at home before I invite Alice to my place? So the takeaway is, in this case, we want to make sure that we can deliver what we promise to the other party. Now, how does that look in Zip? And in Zip, it's, again, I would say, if you're working with Volta and if you're working with Zip, it becomes kind of straightforward. So, of course, Bob sends an invite to the IMS, in our case, and the invite, including the STP, is forwarded to Alice. Alice responds with a 183 session progress. Then we generate a PRAC because we want to avoid that there's a retransmission of the 183. We get a 200K for the PRAC, everything's fine. At this point in time, we know all the details of the session. We know the STP from the A party, we know the STP from Alice, we know the STP from Bob, and now we can actually start allocating resources for this. We can send an AAR to the PCRF, say, okay, I want to make a phone call, and the PCRF will hopefully say, okay, I'm fine, good to go, make your phone call. Maybe the PCRF even says, well, you cannot do video at the moment, but a phone call would be fine or something like that. But it's really about really making sure that you allocate resources before you make a phone call. What happens afterwards is pretty straightforward. We actually indicate in the STP in the beginning that it's an inactive session, so we only are negotiating at this point. And what happens afterwards is really that we send an update, standard Zip update from the Zip perspective, where we say, okay, now we've negotiated the bearer, we negotiated the signaling path, we know everything. Now we can do an update. We can say, okay, now we're good to go. We're sending an update, we're getting a 200K. The resources are allocated, the call is good to go, Alice can start ringing. And that's what's happening. So Alice, in this case, will start sending a ringing, which is forwarded to Bob, 200K, everybody is happy. And the reason for this is because we really just want to do the ringing and the call establishment if we can guarantee the resources on the network. And one thing that may seem odd a little bit if you're not used to this preconditioning is that obviously in the state when Alice receives the invite and sends the 183 session progress, on the phone side it doesn't really it doesn't really appear to happen anything, because it's really just in a negotiation phase. And with this new extensions, we can really do that from script. We can really do that from Kamailio. And if you look a little bit at the standard Kamailio configuration for the proxy CSCF, you see, for example, we send an RxAR, which is actually happening asynchronously as soon as we receive the 183. And as soon as we get a response from the PCRF, actually the IMS cross modules triggers a certain route, the MTAR reply, as we indicated on the RxAR request. And in this case, as soon as we get a positive response from the PCRF, we can actually use this to send a local update. And this again is kind of straightforward, because using the standard dialog module, we can store all kinds of information about this dialog. We can actually even take the STP that we used to send and that we negotiated at the beginning. We can do all kinds of modifications on that because specifically the STP will contain information about the quality of service bits and pieces. We can say, okay, we want to change from inactive to send receive, and then we can simply send an update. And with this having done, we can actually really do the preconditioning locally. And this is, of course, a huge benefit if it comes to working with Kamailio, because Kamailio, when it's interacting with the PCRF, it's the only instance in the network that can really know that the dedicated bearer is up, apart maybe from the phone. Because on the phone you will actually see it in the LTE signaling that you get a dedicated bearer, but from the network side, the PCF knows this, and of course IMS knows this because of the signaling with the PCRF, and this brings a lot of benefits. And as I summarized here, this opens quite a lot of use cases, of many new use cases to Kamailio. And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. I hope, in time, perfect. If you have any questions.
Okay, finding the right window to unmute. Okay, thank you, Carsten. Just to start with this, for contributing to Kamailio and these extensions. I see we can do a lot of, let's say, call control with what's being added there. Anyone that wants to ask a question on Jitsi Meet, you can unmute and say it. I'm checking YouTube channel and Matrix. So Henning, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation, Carsten. Great. Just interested about the IMS dialog module. So you mentioned this will be not needed anymore, basically, right? So can we remove it? Just asking bluntly.
Well, I would say not yet, because there's still a lot of old modules around, but at some point, definitely, I would say.
This is great, because like especially the IMS dialog, it's like a old copy and has some functionality which the other has, and the other has some functionality which the other one don't have, and it's a bit of a mix. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay.
The whole idea around this is really to remove duplicate work in all kinds of modules, and it's really
Yeah, I was looking at some point because there is a conflict with the tables name in the database. You put in
Yes.
both of them somehow conflicts, so it's not possible. But again, I'm not much into the MS extensions these days or so far. Then with like more generic from my side with IMS ecosystem, to put it like that. Well, it's gonna evolve from your opinion being closer, because I think even on the chat yesterday, or it was about, yeah, a lot of standardization moves towards like using HTTP2 quick whatever, including in this 4-5G networks. So I have to implement another transport layer, or that's only at the discussions?
No, it's actually if you look at the 5G specs, then it really depends what release of 5G you're implementing. If you're sticking with release 15, in release 15, you're still able to use both diameter and HTTP2. HTTP2 as being the new things, but if you look at later releases, like release 16, then it's really saying you should go for HTTP2 instead of diameter.
WD-40.
Someone is not muted. Okay, let me.
Crikey.
Okay, so someone was not muted. Hopefully it's now. So okay, it's like HTTP2 everywhere soon, or
Exactly. The reason is really, especially if you look at REST APIs today, then you've got a lot of specs about generating, about basically generating code, and of course all the telco domain, all the recent developments also take care of that, because nowadays you basically create. We've got a definition of the HTTP interface in a spec, and we create code directly from that, and then you just have to fill the code with useful functionality, and that makes a lot of things easier compared to, especially to legacy protocols like diameter or radios, anything like that.
so diameter didn't get a chance to replace radio and gets replaced, right? Or didn't get the enough time to replace completely radios, and it's being kicked out.
I'm so happy we don't do SO7 anymore.
And somehow related, because like we saw with WebRTC, WebSocket, they define in the transport layer like WebSocket, but not like the protocol. Here I understand that it's actually like a format already defined. Could be some JSON. It's standard, so it's not gonna create again islands of vendors. Say you use my product, and then you have to use this API with this message body format and attributes. Is it some standardization there?
Yeah, it's really a standardization. So it's really for if you're developing a 5G release 16 interfaces, it really becomes handy, because all these code generators actually also allow you to create mockups of different elements. So it's really even though you might have a certain element not yet in your portfolio, you can, using the standards, you can even easily create a mockup of the according endpoint, and then program against it, and that's really makes a lot of things easier.
Okay, that's good to know that there is some standard, because in telco before used to be a lot of like signaling protocols, and now felt a little bit, but I didn't spend time to look into like they move again on opening the doors for everyone, implement their format protocol whatsoever. Okay, then looking forward, because you said on the mailing list that you still need to push some code additions. So looking to your next 20 years of contributions to Kamailio, as you started early with CPXpress router. Oh, we have Rick. Okay, one more question from Rick, or it was willing just to applause by mistake. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to add, I think it's going to be some time before we see the back end of diameter. And the reason for that is that there is so much legacy gear and so much momentum within the global MNO ecosystem that even though HTTP2 is definitely going to become dominant, it's not going to get there for at least another 2, 3, 4 years. And at this moment in time, if we want to implement any form of roaming, then we have to do that using diameter, as we found out to our cost. That's one of the reasons why all the big MNOs in Europe still are just solely deploying 5G NSA. That's where you have a 4G anchor channel with diameter signaling, and then just bring in the 5G new radio as carrier aggregated channels, because you can't run the interconnect with anything other than diameter for the foreseeable future. It's going to be two or 3 years yet.
Okay, clear. So still time to run our diameter gears.
Yeah, diameter will live for a couple of years yet, I think, even though Carsten is on a one-man mission to kill it off.
Okay, then thank you, Carsten, and let's hope we will see each other soon in person.
Thank you.
Next year or other events. Now, time for the next presentation, and I'm going to invite Ihor, which also presented, I think, 2 editions ago. It's now back with a session about end-to-end testing of Kamailio and RTP engine using a project VOLTS. We used to test a lot signaling plane in our project, and I saw this. It's going to be interesting to have mid-band signaling tested. Somehow we as Kamailio developers, or at least I, focus a lot on signaling and forget to test, basic call in terms of audio connectivity and so on. Hopefully we'll do it more often by inspiring from the next presentation. Ihor, I let you introduce yourself with more details, and the floor is yours. Thanks for coming back to share the knowledge with us at Kamailio World.
Yeah.
Your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank for having me. And just one question: do you see my presentation? Because I can't see it on the live screen.
Right now, I don't see it myself.
I just saw you when you talk, but I don't see a presentation.
Okay.
You don't have a screen share.
So, okay, wait just a second. Maybe it's a problem with. Okay, just a second. No, I don't think it's working. Okay, let me then just. I can't do. Up. And like this. Is it working now?
Not yet for me.
Autoriser. Oh, not it for you as well. Yeah. Oh, why it's not working? Okay, I'll try to reconnect. Just allow me just a few seconds. Sorry.
Sure. No worries. We have time to go into the.
Yeah. Is now a good time to ask the question, how many people on here are planning to go to Chicago to ClueCon next month? Any takers?
Right now, I should be there. It looks like we can see it here.
I will try to be as well, but can't promise. Okay, now we see the
we've
screen
got
share.
We have the screen share. I'll shut up.
Okay.
Okay,
So
James,
thank you very much. Thank
we'll
you.
get back with the last session. Sorry, Igor, your time now.
Yeah. So as you said, just a small forward. Who am I and why you actually should listen to me at all? So I'm originally from Kiev, Ukraine, and right now near Geneva, which is Switzerland, but I live in France because it's just cheaper to live here. I graduated from the National Technical University of Ukraine from Kiev in 2007, and in about 2 years I started, let's say, whatever my VoIP journey, which is not ended by now. Worked as a freelancer in telecom for 6 years, and I know it's many independent consultants here, so it's not, let's say, a secret to you that it's possible to work as an independent in telecom. It's not only in the big companies, and also I was working mainly on focusing on open source VoIP, and as a drawback, I've, let's say, mostly heard of these proprietary solutions like Cisco, like Avaya, like Alcatel, so I do know about them, but never work with them like really extensive hands-on, and my main focus is open source. It's not only Kamailio, it's also Asterisk, it's also FreeSwitch. As part of this activity, I've contributed to the developed applications for the Fusion PBX. Maybe somebody knows who it is, what it is. And from 2020, I'm working in CERN, which you might also heard of. It's the biggest physical lab in the world with a Large Hadron Collider, and where actually the World Wide Web was born. At least it was stated. So, and for whom all of this presentation is just to define the target, more or less. It can be a PBX developer, means it can be a support engineer, and maybe, I don't know, it's a sysadministration for a small CPBX that it's having support, that it have to know that it's working well. And also, just to say bits about the target, let's say, of the project, the target what was defined. So it's how the VoIP telephony at CERN is actually organized. Because without, let's say, having a bit small background image, it's not really maybe clear why the project had started. So it's really part of the system. So here it's not showing, for example, some old Alcatel system. Here it's not showing some integrations, and it's just shown here that what is actually more or less exposed to the outside world. So we have our own solution, soft phone called CERN phone, which is actually, if you're an Android user, you can download, you can see it in even download it from Google Play, but it won't have much use of you. But you will see it's based on the LIN phone, and we're using it. So, and also we have our desktop phone that is based on the Electron, and it's just because it's cheaper, just because it's easy to deploy to the all platforms, to the all major 3 platforms. So we're using Kamailio and RTP engine as a protocol converter, and RTP, let's say, encrypt, decrypt, and so on, and Asterisk is a main routing engine. And let's say, just to give you an idea, so we have many, let's say, Kamailios in place and many Asterisks in place, and following, let's say, Henning's recommendations, they are using not Ansible but Puppet as an infrastructure as a code. So we have all of this in JIT. So it's just for a small forward. And just to say, so how do you use, let's say, the classic testing, for example, some adding new features to your PBX and whatever. So it's the usual way. So how do you use it? You just try to call and just make sure that the system is working. And this is mainly it. And also for testing, let's say we have usual tools for testing. So the CP that was mentioned, for example, I think it was Daniel that about the signaling testing. But it can't, for example, it has really limited capabilities on media. Also, as a test tool, you can use the CPB access, just a small CPB access. Oh, okay, just small. It's Asterisk, it's FreeSwitch, but it's really esoteric. Also, you can use the SIP console clients like PGSUA, like BearSIP, like LinPhone CLI. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure there are more on the market on the GitHub, but I've seen only this one. And main question is actually, for what do you want to have testing? Mainly you want to have testing is actually regression. When you have developing, for example, adding some new features, some new routing, some new functionalities, you want to make sure that your old functionality is also working. It's still working. And it's not to breaking anything. So you can, at some point, bring the very famous test-driven development in the PBX, let's say, configuration world. When, for example, you have a request to add some feature, to add some new route, you're making some test that makes sure that route or that feature is not working, and then you're fixing your PBX to make sure that the test is passed. Some years ago, it's actually, I think it was 2 years ago, I found a really interesting project called VoIP Patrol from author Julian Chavaton. I suppose I didn't mistake his name because he's from French, I think, from Canada, from French Canada. And this is actually a wrapper built on the top of PJ-SUA, which is more or less end-to-end testing system that can replace your SIP devices on your table. It can emulate any number of devices. It can emulate and it can do basic things. It can register, it can make a call, and it can receive a call. And that's mainly what you're expecting from your phone. And more or less, you can also control some of the headers that are you're receiving on the SIP point of view and what you're sending. And it's based on XML. Why it's based on XML? Because Julian just like XML, and it takes the XML parser from FreeSwitch, and it's also have JSON reports because it's easy to read on the, let's say, with an eye. Let's say, when I look on this project, I've realized that it's not really, let's say, suitable for me at some point, and I forked it. And what's actually the point of the forking was reworking reports, reworking the idea of accounts, added test conditions. For example, the original project can't allow you to have, like, if the call failed, it's also was a failed, let's say, condition of the test. For me, it was something like, I want to have, for example, a call, but I want to have it failed. Or, for example, I want to have a call described, but I don't want to receive this call. So it's also, let's say, so you're configuring something, you want, for example, not this phone rings, but the other phone rings. And you want to make sure that the phone one is not receiving a call. And it was not allowing, let's say. So I've also added support of the TLS of thing and some minor stuff. And actually, one of the things is actually recording audio, which I will talk a bit later a bit more. So it's how it's more or less looks like. So I'm not expecting again that you will be super expert just looking on this XML, but it's just the idea of how it looks like. So this is a configuration file. So you're registering accounts somewhere, and you're just waiting for expected cost code to 100, which means register is succeeded. So, or you can make, for example, a call. So you can define the set of codecs, which is actually here, it's not stated, but it's also good for us that it's also support Opus codec as well. And it can make a call using Opus and receiving call using Opus as well. So it can play files and also record the files. So, and with this, it was, let's say, the idea of having somehow first in mind to have how to organize when you have many of those tests for the VoIP Patrol, how to organize them all together. And with this, I've, let's say, started and the CERN actually in the project called VoLTS, which is then VoIP Open Linear Test Suite, because it's running one test after another. So, and it's using Jinja 2 templates, where I think Jinja 2 also were mentioned somewhere here. And what it's actually were good, let's say, and critical for me, it's have a integration with databases. What does that mean in the databases? I will talk a bit later when I will show you the functional diagram. It's all built on based on Docker, and it also can process analysis, process the reports. So it right now it's have as a default just a table that you can type here on the screen. But right now we have Monit reporting, which the Monit system we're using in CERN just to have as a central monitoring system. And it's actually open source. It's available on GitHub, so you can look in there just to see how it looks. So this is how it's more or less likes. So it consists of 4 Docker containers where you have first one. It takes the XML templates from the VoIP Patrol and the database, for example, integrations, and it's preparing for preparing data for the VoIP Patrol, and then it have works with the database. For example, if you have PBX, that is, for example, in our case, it's Kamailio and also, for example, Asterisk, you just put, for example, your account data, your routing data, your configuration data in database upfront. You're running the test, and then you're cleaning up the database after. That was the idea. And then you just put all the reports in the single JSON-L file, and then just running a script that will just analyze this data, means about the failed test, about the successful test, and just take the appropriate action after this. So this is just a simplified way of how it can be done. As the VLTS is based on PJ-SUA, it supports all of the transport that PJ-SUA can provide. So it's UDP, TCP, and TLS, which is actually also been supported by Kamailio by default, and it's actually super fine. Also, it can support RTP, plain RTP, SRTP, and DTLS, and we're actually using both SRTP and DTLS in our CERN VoIP solution. And as a database, we're using actually MySQL, but as an addition, you can use the PostgreSQL as well. And here it's actually the more, let's say, combined, more advanced scenario where you just what you do. You first creating subscriber in database table, in Kamailio database subscriber table, and then you're just registering it with your VoIP Patrol or PJ-SUA account. And this was the main idea of having, for example, this is a template. So you can describe account once and then use it in a multiple tests further. So not to repeat yourself each time. So it was just adding a template engine to the VoIP Patrol idea of vaults. So just how to use it. It's quite forward. You just clone it to GitHub. From the GitHub, you're building the whole images. You're adopting the scenarios to what you want and just running it. So actually, I can show you here as a live demo. Means maybe I'm not, let's say, just tested it really. But the building, I've already have all these build images prepared, so it's not really the case. And I have also the some test that is just showing here. So it's processing the dedicated scenario, and then it's just running the silently the code. So while it's running the silently the code, I can show you actually the scenario that it's been running here. It's actually here, so it's using Opus. So it's registering several accounts and making sure that we are not receiving a call on one of the registered accounts. So we have this state that fail and accept that is equal true. And here we're receiving the call on the some different account. It's actually just a test for some specific forwarding scenario in, let's say, our internal system, which is maybe, let's say, not super interesting here, but it's just to show you the idea. And here is more or less, let's say, advanced scenario where we're populating the database up front on this system. So first we're creating the subscribers in Kamailio, then we're creating some endpoints in Asterisk, adding some queues in Asterisk, and then making a call. So it's preparing the whole configuration on the, let's say, clean PBX, clean VoIP system, and then making a test, and then cleaning after it itself. So the only thing which is actually here is not cleaned, it's actually CDRs, but it's, let's say, it's the next step. And I am, say, for me, it's not super critical to clean these CDRs on this development server. And here the scenario has passed, and it's just showing you that scenario has passed, call register, register, call receive, and the whole scenario is passed. So if I'll run this, run a SH script without specifying which test, it will just constantly, continuously run one after another all the tests. So it stands actually for linear. It's just a small demo how maybe to use it. And about a bit future, more or less. My idea is also to test the network quality from the, for example, some parts of the world, because the scientists that are working in CERN, they are located in the different parts of the world. They are located in Brazil, they are located in Japan, they are located all over the Europe. And sometimes they are just saying, oh no, my quality of the calls are very bad, so can you please do something about this? And one of the ideas was to have these instances to maybe somewhere worldwide and test the quality of the voice. So with the recording of the voice, it's possible to test the reference, comparing the reference and comparing the recorded voice file afterwards. And here is actually, I've selected two projects. It's like one is actually called PESC from ITU, I think, but it's not supposed to be part of the any other, I think, open source project due to the license details or something like this. And the second one is Viscal from Google, which is I also tested, and they are giving, let's say, more or less nice results. But how I've tested, it's not automated way. I just have a reference file. I just have a recorded file after the call, and I've just run the both scripts, both, let's say, programs against these two files, and they are giving more or less similar results in the measuring modes. And the second one is actually the adding WebSocket, because PJSUA by default doesn't have any WebSocket transport here. And I was thinking to adding one more Docker image based on Kamailio that will just do a transforming, for example, TCP or UDP to the WebSocket, and then just testing, for example, other Kamailio systems with a WebSocket. Also, just what I was mentioning about this, it's right now this system is actually under development to have a constant testing of the production system. So each idea is the following. We have a dashboard with all of our servers, which is showing, for example, this component is live, this component is dead. So just make some any actions, alerts, and just having a dashboard with all servers. And to make sure that our telephony system is working well, the idea was just not to monitor that the servers are alive, more or less, because it's already been done, but to test them against this system. So each, for example, hour or each, for example, time period, the system is automatically running and sending the report of the tests to the Monit, which is actually aggregating and showing it to the dashboard. And currently this, let's say, work in progress. I know it's more or less specific to our environment, but I know there are many more people out there using a Monit, and I think it could be more or less useful to the community as well. So when it will be done, it will be also pointed out on the GitHub page. So this is mainly it, what I wanted to talk about. And many thanks, and ready to hear your questions if there were any questions. I know it's, let's say, more, let's say, closer to the ground, not that IMS, not that really complex topics, but sometimes we need to get to the basics.
Thank you, Ihor. Very useful. A question from me quickly. You mentioned this Monit and gathering statistics. There is another Monit on Linux that is just supervising if an application is running. It's not the same, right?
No, it's what is running on the Linux. I think it's called the agent that is sending to Monit, but we are just using the Monit HTTP query that is just sent to the centralized Monit server. So it's not connected to the collect D or something like this.
Okay. It was someone that wanted to speak. I saw a notification, but I didn't notice who was that. Marcus, you wanted to ask?
I can ask a question. Have you ever thought about having the quality of each call running through the system in real time?
The idea is the following. So right now we're having this information, but based on RTCP. Because due to GDPR, we can't record the calls and we can't analyze the real RTP traffic. So we're just say relying on RTCP here, but to be honest, it's not really accurate because we have, for example, RTCP measurements on the soft phones. We have an RTCP measurements on asterisk, and some very usual. They are not aligned at all. Means it's just some, and means, for example, user can go and complain about the crappy quality of the voice, and you see on the mouse and you see in statistics that's all were perfect, and then you just wow. Without the recording, you can't say but you can have a recording. So yeah.
But with the testing suite, maybe you can like have a pre-recorded audio and send it and see if in the other side gets the same file.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. So we will. I don't know. It means can I have access, for example, to this CERN grid computing system just to have this measurement? But I will figure out something to have about having these in the different locations.
Okay, and right now, how it's reporting on, let's say, if RTP engine it's down or misconfigured, can report that as like
right now,
going beyond like just test failed or not. Like, okay, actually signaling okay, RTP not okay. Or
right now it's not. So as I've said, right now it's just controlling the calls, and it's not. It's controlled the media in the more or less, let's say, hand way. So it's not controlling the media in the full way. But yeah, so it will be done. So yeah, it will be. It will be at some point when the media quality tester would be added to the project, but not at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, this reminded me also of this voice patrol that one should look more at it. I'm not sure if Julian is still around. I saw him a few times in the room, but maybe he left. If you wanted to give some update on that project.
Yeah, just to say that for Julian, so we're talking about this VoIP Patrol project. I'm also returning some of the my patches back to the main project, but not all of them because I've break the, let's say, the compatibility with the original project already, and it's a bit hard.
Anyhow, good to see all this large grid of let's say components there with Asterisk, Kamailio, RTP engine running there. I see something in the chat from Jovan. Did you try CI/CD integration with
Yeah, I
viewers?
have
Yes.
it in mind. I can, let's say, tell you a story, a small story. So in the CERN, it's possibility to have a summer student project. That means you can take a student that can you can assign to some project that he or she will be working on. And I've got the student just to work on the CI/CD integration, but at the moment we're just quit it up because it was too complicated. For the student, and we're just left up with the constant production monitoring. So it's on the table, but right now I'm not sure how to integrate it into the CI/CD with the GitLab that we are using as well. So I need to look a bit more on this.
Okay. And just a remark from James Body to get for everyone, because some are on the YouTube channel. James thinks that CERN phone possibility has the most tested VoIP infrastructure in the world, which I guess, yeah, considering the place, should be the case. Anyone that wants to add or ask a question before going to the next presentation? If not, thank you, Ihor, for
thank you for
taking
having
the
me.
time.
Yeah,
Time
thank
to
you. And
prepare and spend it then with us here and share this knowledge. Testing, it's always something important, but yeah, sometimes goes lower priority more than it should do.
Yeah.
And hope to see you again, maybe
Thank
at
you.
other events in person.
I was
soon.
waiting this year in person as well, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. But the time frame we have as available for our event here, it's in spring, and when we have to start in like winter with the preparation, the situation didn't look very optimistic. But for next year, we hope for the better one. Thanks again, and for all your contributions in the open source space. We know each other for many years, and you help around quite a lot. Speaking of that, who else is on the schedule? Okay, we go to the next speaker, Daniel Constantine, and that's probably me. Okay, so
himself ready. Ihor, just a sudden thought, if CERN have a desperate need for a 5G system, CERN 5G, you know where to come to.
That's a problem. I'll answer the question because right now we have this problem, and the main problem here is actually not the technology but the licensing, because we're sitting on the border between France and Swiss, and
yeah, we can come up with an answer for that. Because there's going to be some European harmonized spectrum coming up.
The problem, Switzerland is not part of EU, so.
But
how about if you just put the transmitters on the non-Swiss part?
I think then the Swiss part, the Swiss authorities come and kill me.
Well, they can't.
No, it's a really tough question about this sharing, because the Switzerland have their own view on the 5G, the frequencies and the 5G standards. Because, for example, if I'm crossing the border, I'm having on my phone written it's 5G, and I'm having VoLTE in Swiss, but not in France. So
yeah, but this will be a private network.
Frequencies and licensing.
Okay, maybe. James, you'll try to sell it during the party. We cut then the recording, and you get the deal. You get the deal on the between gentlemen. Right? Okay. So
sorry.
Hopefully you can see my screen share right now, and as I said, it's going to be the last technical presentation. After that, we are gonna go to the party, just to let the audience know from the YouTube streaming channel. We'll record probably, or we'll stream live first 5-10 minutes from the celebration party for who wants to make some announcements or some greetings. but then we'll turn the streaming off, the live streaming off, and we'll just have a full open discussion, no recording, no live streaming, so we can enjoy the time and share whatever information we want between us. So if you are watching on YouTube and then you want to participate to the open discussion during this party session, you will have to join the Jitsi Meet room at meet.kamailio.com/live. I already put the link in the YouTube chat channel, but to make it also for those that just hear in background. Back to my presentation now. I'm going to speak about full control of SIP message content. I'm gonna give you like examples with Kemi scripting. Actually, it's gonna be like a mixture of Lua and JavaScript from what I remember, but all those functions are available in the native scripting language as well. Some of the functions have equivalent in variables. So it's not something that's just Kemi specific and available only in Kemi. It's available on both variants. Some slides that I keep showing for those that are new to the project and wonder what this Kemi framework is. We have our native scripting language, how we refer to it. It's a scripting language that we developed from scratch, originating from years like 2001, 2002, when not many scripting languages were available like we have now, but those that were at that time were not suitable for real-time communication in terms of speed requirements, also recurrent execution. Most of the scripting languages are like DevOps or oriented, run the interpreter once with a script and shut down, clean all the resources. So the script didn't had, or the libraries didn't have to take care of that. As we evolved with the project, but also the world around us evolved, many scripting languages show up, and some of them focusing also on performance. And learning a new scripting language like this native for Kamailio CFG could be like a barrier for newcomers. And many companies have also teams with knowledge of Python, JavaScript, and so on, and they can reuse this knowledge or save times on learning another scripting language to extent. And considering all this, by 2015-16, I spent some time and resources to enable use of this, let's say, well-known scripting languages, external projects directly by Kamailio as an embedded interpreter. So practically, Kamailio becomes the Lua, the Python, the JavaScript interpreter, the Ruby, and it's running the script natively. So it's not like external execution. To give a little bit of comparison, if you are familiar a little bit with native scripting languages, what would mean translated to Kemi? Practically, in our native scripting language, we define these special blocks of actions. We call them routing blocks, like request route, where we have the actions, these function statements executed for each request received on the network by Kamailio, a SIP request. And now, as with our scripting that we designed it, we developed, we could choose the IDs, the names. In the other scripting languages, we cannot reserve, but we can have a mapping, a recommendation, or a default function name, and that would be the KSR request route. KSR standing for Kamailio SIP router, which will be actually, you'll notice it as being the main module exposed to these scripting languages. Some refer to it as a library or as an object, but you'll see it has, or it offers the functions that Kamailio implements. and it's automatically available in your script that you can write in Lua, Python, JavaScript, and so on. And then we have the other types like reply route, onsen route. They have the equivalents like KSR reply route, KSR onsen route. For other routing blocks, you can define the equivalent functions as callback names. So you just choose your name for a function and you give it either as a parameter to a function or a parameter to the module, like event callback or AVCB with some other name after it. So this is like mapping between what's executed on various cases. And then I have a small example. We have here the native scripting language block route not detect and the equivalent more or less of the function in Lua this time. So you notice here the main object we expose, KSR, and then we choose like object-oriented approach for addressing. So after KSR, you will notice it's either function name if it's exposed from the core, or it's a module name. Like here, it's module not helper. It exposed the not UAC test function, and we have it like called directly by name in the native scripting. And here with this object-oriented approach, the prototype is similar. Most of the cases is the same. In some situation, they are a little bit different. Like in Kemi, are a couple of variants for the same native scripting function to cope with these optional parameters. And then this would be a function which is exposed by the core of Kamailio. So after KSR is just the function itself. So in many cases, you will see just prefixing the function with the KSR and the module name, like here, and also the other one. One difference that you have to do is our return code evaluation. We have a, let's say, a custom one in native scripting language. Whatever value it's returned and it's negative, we evaluate as false in the native scripting languages, and if it's positive, we evaluate as true. That's, of course, not possible to propagate to these scripting languages, which are external. We don't develop them, we don't control them. In those scripting languages, you will have to use comparison, less or greater than 0 to have the same. You have some links here, like a more complete example for Lua, but then if you are interested in JavaScript or Python, I gave a second link where you have for these languages as well, and the generated documentation, which will be like the index of the functions available in Lua, with more documentation, presentation of these interpreters, their capabilities, and some examples there. As I got also a question in the first day about this performance comparison, practically it's insignificant when comparing between Kamailio native scripting and Lua. Lua also focuses on performance a lot. It's used by other high capacity processing applications like Redis or nginx. So it's known in the space being a fast scripting language. And even Python, with the latest, at least Debian stable and preview stable from Debian 10, the version shipped there, the Python interpreter shipped there, it's very fast as well. It's in the range of like 10% penalty. But this, think about execution of the function. Overall, if you measure with the database queries, so this network communication and so on, probably the interpreter itself, it's not significant at all, because this is about how much it takes to execute a function, not about the interaction that function has to do, because if it's an HTTP query, it's a matter of how responsive is your HTTP server application. You have the link to the test, to the wiki page with more details about the test, including the scenario, so you can try to replicate it. It's for an older version, but should be pretty actual in terms of the interpreter framework for the KMI. So this would be some numbers to see exactly. So you can see, like, as a maximum execution time, Lua was even less, but the minimum was still the native, giving the right or the duration. It's in microseconds. Python was not actually far at all. If you look, as I said, it's in the 10% range. So again, if you prefer one of these scripting languages instead of the native one, it's no problem or no concern about the performance of the interpreter itself. You should, of course, concern more about optimizing the database if the queries are slow, or making DNS cache if you do a lot of DNS queries, and all the interaction with the external system via REST API or so. Some remarks, I'm not going to go through them. It's the slide that people can read. And again, you could find it also in some of my previous presentation from previous years, but I keep showing it because it's like every edition, a question arises about this performance comparison. So I'm going now to the subject of this presentation. As I mentioned, you might notice some difference in styling. That means some of them are Lua scripting, some of them are JavaScript. It's a lot of like reference pointing, only a few more complete example for what's new, because many of these functions should be known from the very old times. They were available in the native scripting language for very, very long time. Is just to point out that they are available there, and you can use them in KMI scripts as well, because they are spread across a couple of components. I said, let's put everything together, so some could find it useful when looking for how to update the SIP messages or check their content. First, there are a bunch of functions that are exposed by the core of Kamailio. So again, you'll notice only ksr dot and directly the function name, no other module name. And we have the usual checking the method type, like if it's invite or if it's a list of invite or of method types, like invite ack by. There is this is method in. In the native scripting, we have only is method with some special format for the parameter invite, pipe, by, ack, and so on, because we could optimize it during the startup in our scripting language. Here, I choose a different approach to make it speed oriented. And then you have the usual function to set the full request URI, to set the user part, the dial number, if it's telephony, the host, the target domain or IP address, the internal destination URI. So practically kind of operation that you could do over the SIP message content on checking it or updating it on the request URI. Also from the core, but as a submodule, the PV submodule, we propagated it from the old variant of the interpreter. Before the KMI was introduced, we had external interpreter support, but only for inline executions and ability to execute scripts from inside native scripting routing blocks. Now with KMI, you can replace all the routing blocks with Kemi script. So we propagated this related to pseudo variables, and you have the function for getting the value with a few variants. Give it, and if it's not there, it will return like null, or the variant give it, and if it's null, return me an empty string. Sometimes it's useful for concatenation, not to worry about null and getting exceptions in Lua or so. A variance to get the value, and if it's not set, another value that you offer as a second parameter, get me the value or the number, which is the second parameter, or get me the value or the string, which is the second parameter. So I'm talking here about this get VN and get VS. And sometimes for logs, it's useful to know it is null. And we have this special token, this get W. It's gonna return like a null string instead of empty when that variable doesn't exist in it. Setting it to an integer value or a string value, it's possible with this function. Then checking if it's null and setting it to null with the unset function. You can see a relation with operation like assignments in Kamailio config file or comparison. But again, as we don't control this external language, we couldn't check with our equivalent of a null variable in Kamailio ecosystem. Also from the core and propagated again from the older versions, we have the KSR HDR functions. And these somehow overlap a little bit over the text ops function, and even some of them are twice available, one from this HDR from the core and one from the text ops. These are the basic operation: test if a header is present, then remove it, append, which means add at the end of the headers or after another header or before with the insert. You have also the option to get a header with an index if you have like via contact record route, which can show up many times in the message. You can also remove and append at the same time. There is a function that, again, we had it in this module and it's still available. And also matching the content with some operation like it's in, a equal, and some flags like only the first occurrence or the last occurrence and so on. So there are some variants here that could be handy in some situation. Of course, when you add a header, you can build it with other functions, fetching the source IP, which has a dedicated function in the KX module, which I'll present soon, but you can also get it via this PV submodule with the $SI, which you might be familiar from the native scripting language. Next would be the KSR KX submodule. This is actually coming from the Chemix module. This is a module targeting use with Chemi only, and try to offer functions that are somehow replacing pseudo variables from the config file in terms of receiving values. So practically, with this module, you get a function that would be a replacement for a PV get function, which saves sometimes in terms of we don't parse again what's the variable, look it up in the variable table, and then call the get function associated with the variable. I added because some people coming directly and using Chemi, they were not used with the variables. So we felt, okay, I still have to learn about those variables you have in the native scripting to have more flexibility. And this is offering, it's what Chemis is offering. In the native scripting language, this doesn't make much sense because you have the variables and they are optimized for our interpreter. So I have this function to get the request URI, the from URI, the user part from these headers, get the body, the length of the body, the entire message buffer content, and so on, source IP, call ID. You don't get all functions for all the variables. Again, I made it for the common ones related to the SIP message content, but over the time, this module can get more. From the text ops functions, most of them are also exposed to Chemi interpreters, but some of them probably you can avoid using them because in the native scripting language of your choice, like Lua and so on, for example, if you want to search on header and so on, you have this option to get the value of the header and then use the search function, like string search function from the scripting language, so could be more convenient. But if you like to translate or use the Kamailio API functions, you'll have them. And then you have also the functions for modification of the content, is those that I showed up here because these are more important, because changing the message buffer content, you have to rely on what Kamailio can offer. And you have the variants for the replace, for search append, substitution expression, this set per like substitution that you can do over the entire message, over the body of the message, over a header field. You can even set full body. You can turn the body in multi-part mode and then append the body parts with different content type, checking if it has body, or filtering a multi-part body and keeping only those with the desired content type, like I have here the filter body with application SDP. Also quite new, and I wanted to highlight will be this remove header field by matching with expression. So first will be the header name, like xhdr, then the operator. Here it's in, but you have equal, regular expression, and then what to match with. Here it's Alice. Again, this is also available in native scripting language. I just wanted to highlight it because it's among the latest additions, probably a few years old, but if we look at soups or replace, probably these are from the year 2001, 2002. So when I'm saying newer, it's still pretty old. Now we have these TextOps X functions and those, let's say, more advanced operations that could be done, like setting values for header fields or even for parameters of header fields. It's possible with like assign header field values. Also keeping only some headers besides those that are mandatory. You can also include a value. So this function is checking if that value is present in the header, don't add it anymore. So a little bit more advanced from this point of view. And then we have also this, let's say, maybe famous by now, MSG apply changes. So when you do replace over the content body or changing headers and you want to see them visible, you have to use this function. Otherwise, they will be applied when Kamailio sends out. And somehow, quite powerful function, but also dangerous. You can set the entire body content with this MSG set buffer. So you can get the content of the buffer with the KMX module. You can do whatever operation in your Lua Python script, change it, reformat it, and so on. You have a lot of tools there. And at the end, you set back the buffer to Kamailio. And this is including like MSG apply changes. You don't have to do it again. When you set the entire buffer, it invalidates all the changes and kind of resets with parser and so on. So this is something that in maybe some extreme use cases could be useful to use. And then among the new features of the last stable version, I introduced the header field iterators. So I highlighted on the right side in the gray background, practically you can go one by one over the SIP headers with an iterator. You have to choose the iterator ID. Here I choose I1, but you can give any name. And then you go with the HF iterator next after you started. And you have the HF iterator H name to give the header name, and then you can compare it with whatever operators are available. This is like JavaScript here, so you can have also like starts with other function to match, and you can decide to remove the header that is currently visible on the iterator, or insert before it or after it with append. So I have this flexibility of removing. You can also get the body of the header, so the value of the header with this HF iterator H body. So you get these two, a header name and header body content with these two functions. In the native scripting language, there are two variables here to get the header name and the header body, but then you have the function for removing, inserting, or appending. So this work with the usual change mechanism, so is not including MSG apply changes. It's more like header operations, and you have to do it. So you have the chance to check what headers are there, how many are, change them. You can remove, re-add the same header with different content. I think it's quite a lot of flexibility here. How you build it, of course, here I gave some static value, but you can build it from other functions, variables, and so on. This is only for the sake of fitting in the slide. And even more, I added another iterator. This is the body line iterators. There were some discussions on mailing lists from time to time, how I can see if this it's line it's in the SDP and eventually change it. So this iterator could be used to walk through the lines in SIP message body. Here it's with the SDP, but could be also if it's text message, you can walk over the text lines. If it's presence, can walk over the XML lines there. And we have a similar approach. BL iterator start with an ID that you choose, and then to go. So first initialize it and go line by line. Practically, to get the current line of the iterator, you have the BL iterator value with the iterator ID. Again, in the native scripting language, it will be only this in the Kamailio CFG. We put it in the local variable in the JavaScript, and we use the starts with method of the string object that we created. We can compare it now with anything. We remove that and we replace it with another similar content. There is also the variant to append. So insert is like add before current line, but as the current line was removed, will be at the same place. Same will happen if you use insert here, append here. But if you don't want to remove it and you are at some line, maybe you want to decide I add it before or after this current line of the iterator. And then again, you'll have to call MSG apply changes if you want or if you need to see the changes visible. Maybe you change the SDP and apply the changes in order to give it to RTP engine, for example. That would be a situation where you want to apply changes. Otherwise, again, the changes will be applied automatically by Kamailio before sending out. And another new addition, and this was somehow more targeting Kemi scripts, but the functions are again available also in Kamailio scripting language, because exposing the function is very easy in both frameworks. It's quite common to work with indexes in a buffer, in a string, in programming and scripting languages. And as you could see, we have this function, give me the entire C message, and then you mess up with it. And then it's easier to say, okay, let me find where this IP address it is, like 1.2.3.4. You can give like an index from where to start searching. Like here, it's start from the 100th character. Indexing is from 0, so the first character will be at the position 0, then 1, 2. The function also support negative index, negative position, and then it's counting from the last character. -1 is the last character, and so on. And you can say, from this position, find me this token. And probably you can iterate and jump over. Find me the first, I don't know, Kamailio token. And then if you want to see if it's another one, you go over the position of that Kamailio and see how many Kamailio tokens are in your message. There are functions, again, to insert, like putting value before that position or after that position, or removing from that position so many characters, as it is the second parameter. This work with the usual header like operation. Only the post set char, and I should have highlighted here, I put it in the README, but somehow I forgot to highlight it here. This is updated the buffer directly. And this is a little bit dangerous, but in some cases could be handy to just, replace a character inside the buffer. But be careful with it. Then you have the function to find matching on case insensitive or not, searching reverse from the end. So just string comparison, or searching with the regular expression. These are coming from Kamailio module, but you have plenty of such functions in Lua, Python, JavaScript. So you just get the full C message content, locate some token there that you want to update with that token, or before or after. But knowing the position, then you can use the insert, append, or remove functions from Kamailio to update what Kamailio has in memory. So this should be also giving a lot of power in changing the C message content, especially from the Kemi function. There are many other modules that offer some functions related to update of the SIP message, like from NetHelper, you get this updating the contact with alias and so on. I haven't listed all of them, but they are available in the Kemi. I just listed some of these modules that came in my mind and are related to updating the C message, like QAC, UAC redirect, getting the contact from a redirect response and putting it in the request for creating a new destination branch for that request. All these are, again, possible from the Kemi, although they were for a long time in the native scripting language. One note, as we have a PV module, and the KSR PV was already available in this interpreter prior Kemi, and it stayed with Kemi in the core. From the PV module, we have KSR PVX as the submodule exposed to Kemi languages. And practically, that would be that the tools available from the very old classic available in the Kamailio native scripting to some more recent addition that, as Yufei says it on the channel, on the Jitsi Meet chat, you can abuse a lot using Kamailio the C message content and get whatever you want. Now, questions. I already see one in the Jitsi Meet. Let me stop the sharing first, just to. Okay. Looks like
It's from Jovan. It says, how do you handle a situation when module is not exported to Kemi ready and you want to use it in scripting?
Most of the modules are there. Probably the IMS related modules are not exported to Kemi to the full extent, although at some point there was some contribution from people working with those modules. Probably still majority of them are not available for Kemi. And as Yufei said, there is a function which is also a little bit dangerous to use, but is the only option right now, KSR X mod F, where the first parameter will be the function name and then the parameters. Where I say it's a little bit dangerous, it's a matter of who wrote that function, if it puts their right export attributes in terms of fix up function, the one that we have in native scripting to optimize the parameter value for runtime. And then there is a second one we call fix up free function. If these two are there, or the parameters are not converted with memory allocation, then you are safe. If the parameters are converted with some additional memory allocation and there is no freeing function, then you may end up in some leak. The best would be try join us and expose this function to Kemi. As I said, the native scripting language function, I said it in other presentation, native scripting language function, it's a wrapper around Kemi function. So usual way of, we have a function that is not exposed to Kemi, it's at the beginning, it's evaluation of the parameters and converting these variables to their value, like $RU. If it's a parameter, we have to take actually the value for the request URI. And then it continues with this value as string variables in C. So what usually happens, you have to get the first part and keep it in this native scripting language function, specific for native scripting language. The second part, you make it a new function, which is going to be exposed to Kemi. And this function will have parameters that get directly the final value of the parameter at that moment. So the string value, the integer value, because from Kemi interpreters, you already get the value itself. So yeah, that's the function. Thanks. The second question. I can read it. Is latest Kemi JavaScript using V8 engine, and can we import npm modules? No, it's not using V8 engine. It's using duct tape JavaScript interpreter. This has support, and it was a recent addition a couple of months ago, to import other JavaScript modules with the Node.js interface, but Kamailio is not running the Node.js interpreter in order to run everything available in Node.js space. You can make modules with the Node.js module interface, but has to be the ECMAScript at the end. It's not offering more. It's just pure JavaScript interpreter at this moment. So the question is more no than yes, but we do support some modules there. I see from Yufei, to remove all elements from an H table using HHT reset, is it more performant than setting each key to null? Keep a list of keys and loop through the list. Yes, should be more performant. I think it's just, otherwise when you set each key to null, I have to search that on the list and then remove it. When you reset it, it should just go through the slots of the hash table and nuke them out. Not sure if I implemented it or it was Ramona, but should be this way. If not, a contribution, it's welcome. Just joking, because should be that way. Welcome. Not sure if on channel YouTube nothing, and on Matrix nothing. Any last question? If not, we can
Hey,
wrap.
Daniel.
Yep.
I have a small question. Thanks for presentation. Is everything still based off lumps, like in old sir?
Most of the operations are still based on the lumps, but some of them no longer.
Mm-hmm.
When I made it clear that, okay, this changes directly the buffer. Like I said, from Kemi, you can get the content of the SIP message, the full message. You do whatever in Python Lua, and you build an entire SIP message, again, being an invite, a message, like text message and so on. And you can tell Kamailio, hey, use this now as the new content.
Is there still a reason to keep it that way? I believe like in the old days it was like performance reasons, but it was very, I remember working on like early versions of NetHelper and RTP proxy modules. It was always a big pain in the butt. So when different functions stomped on each other, like you replace something with something, and then some other function comes in and it basically tries to.
Yeah. Indeed, it was some pain for the developers in the beginning, but for most of us, it healed probably.
I'm just wondering, like nowadays, it's like computers are like much faster, and like we have much more processing power. So at some point, it might be just easier to just
yeah, could be. I mean,
just have like one version of and apply it right away, not like just have those.
I mean, could happen at the end. Inserting that MSG apply, changing behind any operation could be done, but we didn't have developers complaining lately. Maybe 10 years ago.
But I mean, you're exposing this to like people with much less kind of. So you now can write those functions in your Lua or Python, and you don't have to be like an expert. So I imagine some people would. Another question is: are there any plans to handle like non-ASCII, like because some parts of the SIP message could be like UTF-8, for example. There is nothing really to handle it, right?
Yeah, that's something interesting to look at. So far, at least from my perspective, I didn't meet such needs. Of course, with the old devices, probably they don't do it, but with newer endpoints like WebRTC could be something that needs to be addressed sooner or later. But from my point of view, right now it's not on my to-do list, as I didn't get any request for it.
Okay, sounds.
Thank you as well. Then, if no other question, because we are also a little bit late to the party, we can wrap up the technical presentation. And thank you everyone for being part of the event, speakers and participants on the Jitsi Meet Matrix channel YouTube stream. I took this as or I'm gonna use this as a marker for end of the technical session and time to party. We have a lot to celebrate. I see something. I build a custom present BLF engine based on Kemi. Due to the constraints, I could not do it in native scripting and all modules from Cesare. Okay, yeah. Kemi provides a lot of flexibility if you're familiar with Python, Lua, JavaScript. You have a lot more function. I mean, if it was not clear from this presentation, but in Python, you can import any available Python library. Same happens with Lua and also with Ruby should be the same. Only with the JavaScript, its JavaScript interpreter is not a Node.js interpreter that is now in Kamailio. Okay, so we'll continue to, oh, I see another question. Is there any plan to get TLSA module to work on the Red Hat? Okay, not related to this question. I personally don't have any Red Hat at my hand in order to give any timeline, but if people can help with that, should be fine. So personally, I cannot help here as I don't have any Red Hat around. And that's it. Let's start the party and I don't know. Woohoo! Yeah, let me bring the cake, right? A chocolate cake this time.
This is where I go and find my Kamailio party hat.
So I will stream a few more minutes just to record it. Is it how you see
Oh, that's
it?
beautiful.
Do you see it as
That
21
chocolate
or you
cake
see it
was-
at 12? Because I made it like binary, right?
I was seeing it as 3, but yeah.
Come on, it's like distance between Europe and US in between. I made it special, right? Because I wanted to make it like 20 as well and 10 here for the Kamailio World. Okay, so to start the party, I'm gonna blow the candles. Happy celebration to Kamailio. Thank you everyone helping with the project and the event. Sorry,
Thank you, Daniel.
I cannot share it with you. I have to keep it only for me. And if anyone wants to say some story about Kamailio that should be recorded or wants to keep it recorded, go ahead. As I said, soon we are gonna turn off the live streaming. If you are on the live streaming, please join. Hey, Atle, nice seeing you.
Hey, nice to you guys. Hope everybody is fine.
Yep. How is doing that SIP Express router 0814?
Oh, we killed it.
Oh
some-
man, you should have put it in the computer museum. Move it running, you know, with the special power supply to move it and keep it running for next 100 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, we shut down the data center where it was in. So, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to hear about that. It was probably the longest living instance of.
It was a fairly special version of 0814.
Yeah.
For those of you who remember, the AVP modules came to SIR 09.
Yeah. So it was no variable there, right?
We had AVP ops and the original AVP module in SIR 0814. Backported by Jan Janak for us.
Oh, special backports. Okay. Yeah, maybe I should share while people present here, but it's from the last year celebration. I didn't make anything else, but just to maybe there are other people here that didn't participate last year when we celebrate 20 years. I made a collection of some pictures I put in a slide. It's in the early days when we shipped SIP Express router on mini CD. If you,
I remember those mini CDs. They used to jam up in your CD drive, didn't they?
yeah, maybe I should have one here. Yeah, I mean it was popular back in the days that you get CDs with software, you know, this. And then some comic, but it's in
Yeah,
kind
that
of
one.
German.
Alfred Hagen made that one. And that one was made from the Telio office in Oslo.
Okay. Don't remember, I just put it here. It's I found it on the internet last year. Next one, with authors of SIP. These are the like Henning Schultz. Here it's Jonathan Rosenberg from the original authors of SIP RFC. Okay, what's next? Here, some of the early days developers: Jiri, Jan Janak, Niels Holmeyer, which now I think it's with Jitsi Meet after being through Skype and Mozilla, if I'm not wrong, and Bogdan Pinta, which was contributing at some point. Here, my evolution from long hair to no hair, and now it's even less. In 2002 to 2018, okay. I didn't want to put a more recent picture because the hair is even less. It's a community meeting in Barcelona with Ole and I think Victor Pascal Aquila should be also. Iñaki, if people know him, he was contributing a lot to Kamailio in like 2008, 2010, then very active in the WebRTC space. Here it's the meeting to merge Kamailio and SIP Express router in
Karsten?
2008. Yeah, that's Karsten.
That's me, yes.
Wow.
Karsten was
There were 1-1 offices should be Henning somewhere here because he organized, or maybe he took the picture. I can't spot Henning here, but he hosted the event at 1-1 offices in Karlsruhe. Okay. Here it's Henning, FOSDEM 2009. This is Henning and Dan Bogos, Andreas Grenig, Ramona, Stefan Sawyer, Oleg again, Alexander Lubovikov. Who else here? Here it was Linux Tag with Karsten again, Henning, Rafael Koefik from SAMS, Andreas Grening,
Andre.
and myself plus Ramona. Oh, here, Astricon.
Peter.
We have Fred here with Peter Dunkley, Klaus Darillion. Who else?
Man, and I thought I was fat back then. Wow.
Kamailio World.
Fred, you're just cuddly.
Astricons, David Duffett, Dan Jenkins, Matt Fredrickson, and here's Alex Balashov, Tori.
Carsten is wearing a business dress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doing a dangerous demo with IMS, I remember that.
And look, there's Joran from Zipgate beside Fred.
Yeah, Joran, it's usually at Asticons. Even here as well, I saw him yesterday. Not sure if it's now. It's another Asticon. Again, Joran, Alex. Look here, even. Nice seeing you again. Tori. And the famous cookies, right? Kamailios and Asterix cookies. Clucon, yeah, it's the hair, it's disappearing. That means it's more recent photo, right?
Yeah, but I'm there to help you look like you have more.
A little bit, yeah. And the last developer meeting that we had in Düsseldorf. So
Yeah.
you can see the very nice offices of SIP Gate. Marcus, they hosted us.
Yeah, this is our kids club. So normally in holidays
it's where you put us. I didn't find any toys there. You're
but
forced to play with computer and coding, and you said it's only that for small kids.
You see the big
available.
bricks on the left side. So
okay. Okay, so yeah, I said it in the first day. Let me repeat shortly. We plan to have another in-person development meeting in Düsseldorf. Marcus already offered to host us. We have to find the dates that are convenient for a couple of developers, and then we'll announce it to the public. Because everyone that wants to help with documentation ideas, coding, of course, it's welcome to join. No participation fee. They have a proper restaurant there and they serve us very well. Of course, you have to take care of your traveling and accommodation because, again, it's community effort. If you need some support, maybe you can contact me and see if anything can be done. But the rule is traveling accommodation. It's on the participant. And then credits again to the best marketing we got for many years, Yeni and
my wife.
Kamailio's cookies that convince more people than showing the code. Take a cookie, install Kamailio rather than showing how to deal with C code and so on. Again, these are from the last year actually, but I thought worth to show them again to start the party. Now, again, if anyone wants to say something for the YouTube recordings, please do it. If not, let's cut the live streaming and have full open discussion and disclosures and whatever. No recording will be done after. Anyone that wants to add? If not, then many happy returns to Kamailio World, and everyone here. We'll see each other next time, hopefully in person in Berlin, late May or early June next year. Keep it in your mind and watch our website, social media channels for announcements when we know, let's say, how the evolution goes and if we can host it properly without big risk in person. And I do hope we can do it next year. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, watching on YouTube, being in the room or in the Matrix channel. And that's it. Let's cut.